this to Sylvie, Kevin's size. Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So, we're going to do 1, 2. You do 1, 2, 3?
Okay, it's after 3. Just,
No, it's on.
It can't be on 3 because I'm saying number 3.
3.
1, 2, 3.
Welcome to Muay Thai Bones podcast. Right. If this is the first time seeing us, 200 fighter Sylvie and her husband Kevin. We do these podcasts usually driving back from a fight that Sylvie's had. As we drive across Thailand, we are usually driving from Chiang Mai to Pattaya. That's what we're doing today. And it's about a 10-hour drive, and we've already been on the road for 3.5 hours.
Something like that?
So we're kind of well into our journey. The reason why we started this podcast is we have these great conversations on the road and about Muay Thai and how Muay Thai affects all of life. And so we're like, let's just record these and share our thoughts with everyone else, because Muay Thai is incredibly deep. There's so much detail into the kinds of things that can be talked about, and hopefully the podcast reflects that. We try to have a lot of variety in our conversations, so if you're not into what we're talking about at any particular moment, just jump ahead 15 minutes and There'll probably be something else interesting. We wanted on the topics that we went over, one of the first one we think maybe is the best one. Usually we talk about technique in Muay Thai towards the end of the podcast, but maybe we're going to start with technique conversation in the first part. What we find very interesting is that Sylvie's experienced a kind of like explosion in clinch vocabulary.
I don't think it's an explosion, it's like an awakening.
Okay, tell me what an awakening feels like, or what we're talking about in terms of an awakening.
Well, you were comparing it to like a Rosetta Stone type of thing, which is that once you get the key to understanding things, all of a sudden you can read everything.
Well, what's the Rosetta Stone? The Rosetta Stone was a stone that contained languages that had not previously been translatable, and once they broke the language code, suddenly lots and lots of texts, ancient texts, were readable.
Yeah.
And it was a huge thing because it just opened up a culture of writing. So why are we comparing clinch to writing?
The reason it's like an awakening like that is the texts were already there, you just couldn't read them. Whereas an explosion is kind of this like an explosion in population, or an explosion in... It's like this sudden expanse.
Right.
And I don't think that my expansion was sudden. I think it was already there. But my ability to access it has been very recent.
Let's dig into like, what are we talking about? Like, what has increased?
I'm a clinch fighter, for people who don't know me. And if you don't know me, I don't know why you're watching this.
Maybe people are just finding out about you.
I'm a clinch fighter. I've been very dedicated to practicing, learning, developing clinch for at least 5 years. One of the reasons we moved to Pattaya from Chiang Mai was because I could not learn clinch up in the north. And I've been getting a lot of hours in the pool, so to speak, like just spending time in the water. But I wasn't able to kind of bring experimentation into even the learning process. And then the experimentation that I could bring into the learning process as I got stronger and better, I couldn't bring into the ring with me. But very recently, my clinch vocabulary has suddenly, it's like your 4-year-old had like a 20-word vocabulary, and then next week she's like totally telling you the entire story of Alice in Wonderland with vocabulary you did not know she had.
Totally.
It's like, where did that come from? It's very sudden.
And as some backdrop for people who are just not that familiar with your story, why pursuing clinch? Why becoming a clinch fighter in the first place? It's a kind of interesting little side story. If you would allow me to, let's take a little loop around on this.
Yeah.
You're a very physically small fighter, and as you came to Muay Thai, because you were small, you were told by many knowledgeable people that you should be a little like evasive, hop around, don't hit me, hit and don't be hit fighter.
Be Demetrius Johnson, basically.
Yes, but with Muay Thai, which he doesn't. He's not really a Muay Thai fighter, but in the Muay Thai world, this was really thought of as like, this is how women should fight, this is how small people should fight, is this Muay Thai, which is artful, kind of slightly evasive style.
Not powerful.
Not powerful, exactly. But you're a very powerful person in a lot of ways. And it was a really kind of evolution of your own identity to discover that Muay Khao is an alternate form of Muay Thai.
Well, that it is a form of Muay Thai, like that it's a style to itself.
Yeah, but alternate in the sense that it's often pitted against. It's the nemesis of Muay Thai.
Yeah, it's the opposite of what I was being told to be.
Yeah, and so there was a discovery that Muay Khao and clinch fighting is its own art form. And then the more interesting discovery is you can use it to beat really good Muay Thai fighters.
Yeah, and bigger fighters.
And bigger fighters. So the journey of becoming a clinch fighter has been part of also like this journey of discovering this style that's close to an identity for you.
Right, and it's a bit like the self-discovery ugly duckling thing where you're like, oh, I'm not a duck. Whereas like people telling me that I should fight a certain way because of my body size, the frustration with that is because that is not my style. Like, it was very hard for me to do that. And my inclination towards being a little fucking tank or whatever, discovering that that is a style was like,
crazy.
Oh, swans.
Oh yeah, you're like, I think I'm a swan. Totally. Like a Hulk swan. So in pursuing this technique and this art form, we kind of discovered, because of the Muay Thai library, for those that don't know what the Muay Thai library is, patrons pledge every month and they get access to a lot of exclusive content, but one of the big things, the big project, is Sylvie and I driving across Thailand and filming with legends of the sport, archiving the techniques of Thailand before they kind of pass out of relevance.
Yeah.
And through this, you've actually been exposed to an incredible number of high-level masters of clinch fighting and knee fighting. And you've kind of developed a library in your own head, a knowledge base that I think is unprecedented in the history of the sport, just in terms of exposure.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of challenge, like when you're developing a technique, usually you have one dominant coach. So your coach is teaching you his style. If you're in the West, it's maybe even more the case like this. You need to learn your coach's style. A really good coach would be able to like maybe give you versions of his knowledge that would be good for you and not good for someone else. But very rarely will you be exposed to 20 master level knowledge downloads.
Right.
So part of the challenge that you've faced is digesting all these influences in Muay Thai. Can you talk a little bit about that? About maybe we're talking about your vocabulary increasing, but part of the reason why your vocabulary is increased is that all these years you've been taking on vocabulary.
Yeah.
Do you not follow me on this? Am I going down the wrong road?
You need to be more direct in what you're asking. How
did Langsawan, Yodwicha, Karahat, Namkabuan, like these people literally taught you their, I think of it in terms of dialects. like a language has dialects. You haven't learned Italian, you've learned Italian and 10 dialects in Italian.
Right.
It seems like you're not actually following me along this path. You want to go a different direction?
You actually didn't specify your question. You just specified the generalities of the question. But let me just tell you what I was thinking, maybe even not even understanding your question.
Okay.
Something that many people say to me when they're looking at me training with these people is, when you're given different techniques, how do you know which one to do? Like, isn't it confusing to have people tell you different versions of something? Point the toe, don't point the toe. Lean back on the knee, don't lean back on the knee. And I used to say that it's not that hard because it's like remembering not to swear in front of your grandma, but you can cuss with your friends. It's like understanding who you're with, kind of thing.
So you're saying do whatever the teacher in front of you is telling you to do.
Yeah, so like when you're with Yod Kunpan, don't lean back. When you're with Karahat, lean the foot back, because that's his technique.
Yeah.
But it's more complex than that, and not complex in a difficulty way, complex in a beautiful way, which is, it's not swearing in front of your grandma because she's going to get mad. It's like, it doesn't fit within the context and program of how you talk to your grandma. Like, you wouldn't say that fucking guy in front of your grandma because that's not how you're talking. Like, it's not even what you're talking about. So it's not like hard to not lean back on the knee with Yod Kunpan because not leaning back fits into the entire conversation. Like, I don't accidentally speak English when I'm speaking Thai with Krunu because it doesn't work. Like, it doesn't make sense to. So you stay in Thai because that's the conversation you're having.
And that's why I compare these variations in clinch and Muay Thai fighting and all fighting styles to dialects. Because a dialect is not an independent language, but it's a whole form of communication that's consistent unto itself.
Yep.
And in some languages, you can push the dialect so far that people outside of it can't even really follow.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what's kind of interesting, is that you've kind of been studying dialects of technique and styles in the Muay Thai tradition with great variety.
Yeah.
And you've also been experimenting about how do you stay in a dialect.
Right. But there's this new thing that's happening in that I'm able to have these conversations with each trainer or teacher or whatever the thing is. But recently I've been kind of experimenting with the vocabularies from each of those conversations in my own work. And so when I'm clinching at the gym, there are things that don't really fit together. Like, you're either a really good lock fighter or a really good long clinch fighter or a really good don't grab at all and knee from a distance fighter. And I've been able to start transitioning between them, so that I was clinching with Make the other day and I was transitioning between long clinch, lock, long clinch,
Banks lock, right?
And what's beautiful about the two of those together is that the long clinch makes it so that people cannot lock you. That's what my framing does. And the lock makes it so that people cannot frame or move or do these other things. And so to transition between them, it's being able to shut out your opponent's flexibility from two different angles.
Well, and just to interrupt real quick, long clinch was developed with your study of Thanadet up here in Chiang Mai, and there's a Muay Thai library session of that. It's an incredible branch of Muay Thai. And then the lock didn't only come from Bank in Petron Rung, but Bank's Pinu's son, but it was founded on your learning it from him.
Yeah.
And so you started, if I understand it, you started experimenting and moving from Thanadet, it's a northern style clinch, to Banks like fucking Bank lock, like a safe house lock, an unmovable kind of freezing of your opponent.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing to me is that Bank's a lock fighter. He doesn't do a lot more than that. Tonadet is a long clinch fighter. He doesn't do a lot more than that. But you are, because you're studying in both those styles, you're able to move between them and kind of creatively move between them. Whereas you can discover what are the natural transition points between a lock fighter and a long clinch fighter.
Yeah, it's like kids who are truly bilingual who kind of go back and forth between English and Spanish, like mid-sentence. It's not like I speak English with mom and Spanish with dad. It's like totally blended.
And this is what also is interesting to me is in lock fighting, it depends on your opponent, but in lock fighting, you can get to if you really hit the lock right, you can get to an inescapable spot where you will just destroy in the round. In long clinch, same thing. Like if you really hit the long clinch in the right way against the right kinds of opponents, you can get to an inescapable position. What's really kind of interesting to me is because in a fight, everything is high stress and high tension, it's very hard to hit techniques exact. Like you're not going to hit the sweet spot in it, which means that, and sometimes you'll get opponents that can kind of manufacture escapes. But what's really interesting is that the lock will be inescapable for 5 seconds. And then it'll start to break down.
Right.
This is just reality, like how it plays out in real fights.
Answers to things.
There's answers, especially if you can't get the exact positioning that you need. And the same thing with the long clinch. Just using those two examples. If you are in a lock for 4 seconds and your opponent's working on solving it, you just move to the long clinch and you give them a new puzzle before they break it, before they break the code. And as your vocabulary increases, if you're not just moving between lock and long clinch, but you're also doing the arm loop, or you're throwing in low clinch, or you're throwing in trips, you can keep changing the puzzle before the code is cracked.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, the ref can never break it.
Yeah.
And that's what I see what's been happening in fights recently, is you're moving between puzzles.
Yeah, and it's not like a move. It's...
Well, what do you mean by that? This is a good thing to bring up. What is a move? And why is it not a move?
Having like a trip that works most of the time, or a lock that gets most people, or a face cross that gets you out of most things, or that's a move. It's like you've got a really fancy vocabulary word that you can pull out and kind of like in conversations with, or kind of like one-up people with, or appear stilted with, or whatever the thing is.
The yo mama joke that always wins.
But when it's not a move, but rather like actually vocabulary, and you're expressing something and moving between things, and it's not like, wow, you pulled out your flare trip. It's like, wow, you kept your opponent off balance for like 2 minutes.
Yeah, and if you're a tripping fighter, it's not a trip, but it's like you're going to have to deal with the fact that I can trip you at any time. So that becomes a mode of fighting, which is tripping fighting. If you're a locking fighter, your opponent is like, holy fuck, I gotta stay out of the lock.
Yeah.
That's why it's not a move. That's why it's not a move, though, is because the move actually implies a larger context, a way of what?
That was why I laughed when we were filming with Sifu the other day.
Yeah.
And he, even though he knows me quite well, but doesn't know my fighting very well at all. He consistently, because I'm small, again, because you're small, you're supposed to be a certain type of fighter, he's always telling me how to stay out of the clinch.
Right.
And I'm always like, I'm trying to get into the clinch, like all the time.
Yeah.
And so he was saying something about like, you don't want to lock them because then they can rest. And I smiled and I laughed and I'm like, not when I clinch. Like when I get my jaws locked on you, you're not breathing anymore. Like,
totally.
That's not how that works. So.
Totally. So this goes to a larger philosophical, well, maybe philosophical too strong a word, but the difference between a move and the context in which that move gains life. And this is kind of a struggle that Muay Thai has with its exportation to the West and probably Japan and other countries, is that much of it is taught by people who are not in the Muay Thai culture. People come to Thailand, study, train, fight. They learn the techniques, but they haven't stayed long enough to absorb the entire style of them. And then it gets exported. They become coaches or trainers to no fault of their own, and they teach a simplified move version of it to students, like often to big rooms of students. So the style, or the family of techniques that build a style, become extracted from.
Yeah, well, I speak German. I went and lived in Berlin for about 8 months, and in that time became fluent. But I haven't spoken German in a really long time. So when I was fluent in German, in an active, living, speaking German every day, I was actually thinking in German.
Yes.
I don't think in German anymore.
Yeah.
So I can still speak German, but it's basically this super limited, pared down, it's like moves. It's like, I know the word.
I know how to say that. I know how to say that in German.
So I can translate what I'm thinking into German rather than like thinking in German.
Interesting idea.
But I'm living in Thailand, so I think in Thai now.
Yeah, and also you've done this kind of like Clinch immersion since like 7 years now.
Yeah, so it's thinking in Clinch rather than like, what do I do?
100%. And I guess what we're talking about is that you've hit a new level of thinking in Clinch. Maybe it's like, now I dream in Clinch. And so, I don't know, can you talk a little bit more about what you think brought on this shift, this unexpected shift? Because you've experienced a lot of frustration.
I don't know.
To me, well, I have some ideas. I'll throw them at you, tell me what you think. To me, it was like maybe 8 months ago, you correct me on the time, when your main Clinch partner was Team. Maybe
that was more than a year ago.
Okay, more than a year ago. Team, a Thai fighter at Petramrung, Thai boy, stadium fighter. He had just gotten strong and big.
And too big.
And this is what happens, is the Thai boys come through, Sylvie clinches with them, and they just outgrow her. And suddenly she's facing somebody who not only is as skilled, if not more skilled, but also physically strong. And physical strength's a big deal in technique, because if you don't hit the technique right, you can still muscle the technique if you have the strength to do it.
Yeah.
So you're tolerant when you're facing someone stronger than you. The tolerances by which you can lose become wide. Like your clinch partner doesn't have to hit the right technique in order to overwhelm you.
Yeah.
And so the consequence was you got incredibly conservative with your clinch. You became a dead still lock fighter.
Yeah.
Because you were just trying to survive against
I didn't want to lose my position.
Yeah, so you would fight for your position, and then you'd get a very fucking like pit bull lock on and just hold on for dear life.
Yeah, but it's like when you're trying to cross the monkey bars, you have to let go of the last rung to move forward. Otherwise, you're just dangling from the monkey bars.
Yeah, but you could.
But I was doing because I wouldn't let go.
You wouldn't let go.
So I was just dangling in the middle of the monkey bars. I was very inactive.
And the problem is that then when you would fight fighters that were bigger than you but not as skilled as you had developed this pattern, this habit of locking hard and not moving.
Yep.
And what was happening was, because the way that a lot of Thai female fighters fight you is they basically try to neutralize. All right, battery change, as we do. So we were talking about how, like, the things that might have led to this sudden vocabulary increase, right? Mm-hmm. Change of partners, you starting to concentrate on fluidity and movement between positions, like not not getting to your position and just holding, but surrendering good positions, right?
Yeah. I don't think that I was thinking of it like that. I think that I honestly was like, just don't lock, like just keep moving. And because I had a change of partner, because Carabao is not bigger and stronger and better than me, I was able to experiment more. So the reason I was able to experiment was because there wasn't so much consequence to taking the risk. So there were times when like it didn't work or I lost my position, or you took quite a few photos of me and Carabao in some serious like face smushing.
Yeah, I bet there's one really like, nice one, yeah.
Clinches. But that's a period of like a year I've been clinching with him.
Turn right.
Oh,
don't go right, go straight. We like that road better.
Okay. And you also had Mick come in, who's like heavier but much less skilled.
Yeah.
Right.
So I still sometimes get thrown from Pinu into training sessions where I'm going against someone who's very big. Like I still have to work against the bigger
turn right
training partner sometimes. But because that's not my only thing, because I can compare it to other scenarios, and there was a very recent, this was actually right before my like breakthrough. Sorry, I'm gonna do this.
Oh, good.
This was right before my recent breakthrough, where like I went and fought in trot, and that was where we were like, holy shit, Sylvie's clinch vocabulary just
shot up.
Yeah. I was man in the middle, which is a way of clinching where one person stays it all the time. And when someone gets dominated or thrown down or whatever, a fresh person comes in all the time. So that's when you switch partners, is when something happens. So you're always working towards these big moments.
But when they happen, a fresh partner comes.
A fresh partner comes. So there is some consideration where you're like, Carabao is harder to clinch than Make, so I'm not going to throw Make right away.
Yeah.
I'm going to work on this a little bit.
Some of the Thai boys get absurd about this.
But I would be man in the middle with sometimes 3 partners, but Pinu was having me go against a Swedish woman who's much bigger than me and strong, but not super skilled.
So this is outside of Thai boys that
this
you usually...
This is really recent.
Yeah.
And then he would have me either have the second person be another person who is bigger than me, or possibly Carabao, who I can do a lot more experimentation with. So it's moving between like experimentation, heavy load, experimentation, heavy load, or like 2 heavy loads. How do you deal with that? And I think that's
not variety, just heavy load.
The 2 of them is.
Yeah.
But because you don't want to exhaust yourself, you can't go heavy against heavy. You can't do it. If you have one that's heavy and one that's skill, you can be like, when I'm going against the heavy one, I use strength. When I'm going against the skill one, I go a little bit, whatever. When it's heavy and heavy, you can't be strong all the time. You fucking fall apart. It's like holding the dictionary up.
Yeah.
And so it actually forces you into relying more on technique, which I didn't do before. I would just use strength against strength all the time. So I think that expanded my access to my vocabulary very recently, but because all that other work had come before it, like being able to clinch with someone who wasn't scaring me and being so strong that I had to stay clung to the ring all the time.
Totally. I lost my train of thought there. Something more than just clinching with 2 big Western girls has happened here, though. Like,
I didn't say that's what it was. I was saying that right before the breakthrough and all the things that led into that moment, I was forced to expand my vocabulary because of the exercises that Krunu was putting me in.
What came to my mind when you were talking about heavy versus heavy, or being strong on strong, is this little thing that happened in your last fight. We're driving back, Sylvie just won a world title versus Nong Ben's, giving up a ton of weight. There's a little thing that happened in that fight you told me about, where Pinu is telling you to like leverage out your elbow when you're in the frame and you're scarecrowing somebody. talk a little bit, because that's about not using, or using technique against strength.
Yeah, so like when you have the inside position and someone wraps their arm around the outside of your arm and is like pushing your face or something, if they're taller or bigger or strong, because you're already in this position, you don't have a lot of strength to get out of that position. And so he was teaching me kind of pressure points or ways to lock out their ability to get a really good grip. So for example, when someone tries to grab your neck, if you close your neck, they can't get the perfect grip.
Right.
Before they get the grip, you do this. Or if you keep your elbow on the front of someone's chest, you always have this little door jamb to create space. Whereas if you go over their shoulder, you can't create space anymore.
Okay.
So this is like those little techniques, which is that when you're locked here and they're coming over you and pushing you, you've lost your strength. So you use your elbow on the inside of their arm to kind of pressure it out, and it makes them lose a bit of their strength so that you can then move.
Right.
So when I was clinching Nong Ben's in this fight, we were in that position, and I could not get the arm loop, which I have to have freedom in my arm in order to...
Well, it's not that position because you're trying to go outside. That position is inside.
No, it is that position, because when you're inside, you're trying to go outside, but if they're locked over your arm, you can't come out. So you have to create freedom for that. And there was this moment that people who do BJJ will understand, which is using patience to get where you want to go. You cannot use constant pressure, you tire yourself out. But the same way that she was using strength to lock my ability to come out, you can't keep using strength like that.
Yeah.
You can't hold that position forever.
Yeah.
And I'm so fucking strong, and I'm like, I'm just gonna wait you out. I'm gonna put a little bit of pressure right here on the window and wait for it to
And this
shatter.
was on an arm loop, right?
I needed to arm loop her, but I couldn't, because I was like this.
I have a photograph still from this moment in the fight.
Well, that was the beautiful thing. We were filming yesterday, and Crew Cha, when he was watching that Instagram, it starts with me with my arm like this. Yeah. And he's like, no, you should have your arm over like this. Yeah. And I'm like, wait.
You said that to him?
Yeah. you see the like pressure, and then the like weight coming down to fold it down.
Turn right.
And part of the thing about what Kranu has worked with me on in that is he's so big. He's so much bigger than me, and he's really long, and he's really skilled, and he knows how to like frustrate. Just punches me in the face from like 3 feet away.
Yeah,
and
but
stuff.
that sounds untechnical. His frustrations are very technical.
Very technical.
Like he's long and
I'm
technical.
Getting frustrated because I know what he wants me to do and I cannot do it. Yeah. And I got kind of frustrated, and I was like, what do I do to him? And he's like, you can't. I'm just too big. And what he was teaching me was be patient. Like, I'm too big and strong. You may not be able to do the move you want to do. Stop trying to do a move. Like, find your way there.
Yeah, it's the feeling. Like, this is the thing. It's like a move would be arm loop.
Yes.
The feeling is, how do you get to the arm loop from where you are? And this is why Muay Thai, Clinch, is like a full-on martial art to itself. It's standing BJJ. Because there's feelings on how to get from positions to positions. The transitions are where the art is and where the feeling is. Yeah. And 6 months ago, you could have never gotten to that arm loop.
No.
And if you hadn't gotten to the arm loop, you knocked her out 5 seconds later. Yep. With the knee on the other side. Yep. The entire knockout would have been impossible for you just because you didn't have the feeling. Yeah. And it's really interesting that the feeling is starting to grow. Something that might have started with the filmages of the Inner Game of Tennis reading group we did 8 months ago or whatever that was. This philosophy of moving towards the feeling. But that was really cool that there was this decisive moment in the fight where you were kind of in a slightly inferior position and you just had the patience to slowly transition out against strength. Yeah. Even though you're a strong fighter, you're like, I know you can't hold that position. Yeah. And it's like, oh, there's something so unbelievably cool about that. and I don't want to go too far in this one direction, but this is something that I don't know how you even feel about this, but this is something very special about your path as a Muay Thai fighter, is that for a long time you wanted to be good, which was just have nice looking Muay Thai, like as many people do. And instead you found yourself on this clinch Muay Thai style, and you're exposed yourself to so much vocabulary, a library of techniques. I don't know that there's a fighter in the history of Muay Thai, Thai or Western, who's been exposed to this much high-level knowledge. Because the way you learn stuff in Thailand, like if you're a Thai fighter, is you're taught within your gym. There might be like 3 technique families in your gym, and then you pick up on one and you like that one and you develop that one, and you steal from your sparring partners a little bit, but you're exposed to a pretty narrow though elevated family of techniques. Because of the uniqueness of the Muay Thai library, you've been exposed to like 20 like complete styles.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's ever been a fighter who has had that kind of depth of exposure. And you now have an encyclopedic brain where it's like, oh, face smush, there's 5 ways to face smush.
Yeah.
There's 5 angles to put your shoulder at. Should you stand up? Should you pull away? Like Sancti Noi does it this way. Karahat does it this way. Like, to see these variations makes you be able to see into the nature of the technique.
Yeah.
And all of them are right.
Yeah, and they also have variation. It's like Karahat tends to do it this way, but he'll adjust if he needs to, kind of thing.
Which goes back to feeling.
Or if he's bored, he'll just change it.
Totally. But I guess what I'm saying is that you now have the opportunity to like explore, especially since you're moving towards feeling now, a really big, this is why we talk about like Rosetta Stone, library of techniques. No? Does this not interest you?
I agree with you.
Okay.
But you don't just read a book and that's everything you've learned from it. You learn it like 4 years later when you're like, oh man, I totally need to read that again because I feel like I understand it differently. Like it kind of sticks in your mind.
Well, tell me about this analogy. We had a little bit of this discussion before we started the camera. The Nabokov of vocabulary. Like we compared some of these decisions to Nabokov, one of your favorite authors.
Yeah. The thing about Nabokov that's just...
For people who don't know Nabokov.
So fucking unfair.
Okay.
Everyone knows him as the man who wrote Lolita.
Well, not everyone, but many
Anyone
people.
who knows his name knows him as the man who wrote Lolita.
Yeah.
But he has many incredible, incredible books. He's Russian. First language is Russian, but he speaks like 5 or 7 or something.
I think French was a very powerful language for him when he was growing up.
But what's insane is he's as poetically gifted and versatile in all of them. Like, English is my first language, and I wish I spoke it as well as Nabokov does, or wrote it as well as Nabokov does. And I have a good vocabulary, like I am a good writer. But he does this thing when he's writing where he'll choose the word from any of those 5 languages because that's the one that really pulls the connotations and feelings of what he's trying to get.
I mean, to be clear, he's writing in English.
He's writing in English, but then he'll just use a French word out of nowhere.
Right.
And if you don't know the word, you kind of know the word from the context. Like when I was reading Ada, he totally pulls in French words all the time. I don't speak French at all.
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't have roots that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I totally get not the denotation of that word. I don't know literally what that means, but I get the feeling of what he's pulling in.
But it's not only that. It's not like, oh, he throws in all these language words. His sensitivity to language, because he has that sensitivity in many languages, makes him an unparalleled writer in English.
Yes.
Like, the way he uses English words is unreal.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, my own language can do that.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Totally.
And that's kind of what is really interesting about this Muay Khao development, is that Muay Khao is thought of often as a kind of like march forward, grab, knee, power fighting.
Yeah.
But it really has incredible subtlety in it
Yeah.
if you come at it with a large vocabulary.
Yeah.
You can fight Muay Khao, grab, knee, cardio out somebody. You can fight that way. But like this thing you were talking about, where you just put a little pressure on her arm and waited for her strength position to decay,
Yeah.
which led to a knockout. That's fucking unreal. That, to me, that's what we're talking about, this Nabokov kind of concept
Yeah.
of being able to use English, which is thought of often in the world, in the family of languages, as kind of like a working language, like very functional,
Yeah.
but lacking in subtleties sometimes. But to be able to use it with great subtlety, that's what Nabokov is kind of like. And I feel like you are heading towards this kind of Nabokovian thing if you continue to be able to open your pathway, which is kind of like, and then what's interesting about it is I don't know of any fighter in the history of Muay Thai, and maybe there's some slick Isan fighters where this has been the case. Any fighter in the history of Muay Thai that has used clinch to defeat much, much larger opponents over and over and over again. Clinch is usually a power attack. It's not often used by smaller opponents. You are doing this thing. We had that cool experience of watching, I think it was that Pride documentary.
Yeah, I think it was really about one of the Gracies.
Oh, yeah, Gracie documentary. There was the little Japanese guy that fucking uses heel hooks to destroy and defeat giant opponents.
Yeah, he was in this tournament.
I'm sure people watching this are like, oh, that's blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But when you're able to use techniques to defeat larger opponents, you really are exposing the art of it.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening in your career path, because you're only going to be fighting bigger and bigger opponents, and you're having to learn to use the vocabulary of Muay Thai to defeat somebody with a significant size geometry advantage on you.
Right, which for a very long time has actually been very limiting to me. So for it to be...
How do you mean? I'm not following.
My Muay Thai, because I fight people who are so much bigger, is limited by the fact that they're so much bigger. I get
things you can't do.
angered by comments I get from people who have never faced someone bigger than themselves ever, being like, I don't get what you're trying to do in this fight. And it's like, yeah, you wouldn't, because you're fucking limited by someone having that much range and size on you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to be able to do kicks and like, kind of more finessed movement.
Why would you
moves.
love to do that?
I would love to have that in my vocabulary. I don't want to be that fighter, but it's the same thing where like Bank is incredibly strong, but when he does Karahat's flip down, that's not a power move. You're like, holy shit, did he just say parlay? Like, he just spoke French all of a sudden. It's like kind of amazing.
So, one last little bit on this. How much time we got on this?
7 minutes.
Okay. One last little bit that I think has really been a huge impact on really why you've had an explosion. Well, I'll call it an explosion because I'm a dude. Everything explodes.
The Michael Bay
explosions. The Michael Bay version. Michael Bay analogy. The explosion of vocabulary is the work you've been doing in Vipassana, which is an hour a day, sometimes 2 hours a day. You've been on several retreats, but this seriousness with which you've kind of like moved your mind towards a much more flexible, open state that is in contrast to the pressures you feel for performance.
Yeah.
And the fact that every day you're stretching your mind out to these like, for people who don't know, Vipassana is not about like chilling out.
It's not a tranquility.
It's not a tranquility meditation.
It's not even a calmness.
It's growing the awareness of your body, right? And mind.
Yeah.
There's something about that I liken it to when you're under tension or in your everyday states of mind, you have a diameter, like your pipe has a very small diameter, and there's only so much water that can flow through that. When you are moving towards your Vipassana states, your pipe has a very wide diameter and more water can flow through that. And I feel like that's the same thing that's happening with your techniques, is somehow the diameter has changed. Can you talk about that at all for me? Or you don't really connect it?
I don't connect to it, but what, to me, the relief or freedoms that I've gotten from Vipassana is not resisting states so much. So a lot of people, when they're trying to meditate, will get really frustrated when their mind wanders because it's not focused. And when you're meditating, you're supposed to be focused and tranquil and all these things. But Vipassana teaches you that the mind wandering is a natural state for the mind to be in. The mind wanders, that's what it does. It's like being angry that you're tired. Like the body gets tired, that's what it does. And so you sleep.
Right.
But I think that I get really frustrated in Muay Thai because my body is doing or my mind is doing things that Vipassana has taught me are natural states. And because nothing can stay the same forever, it's like, just pull the mind back. It's wandering, just pull it back. That's not what we're doing right now. Instead of like, God, it's fucking wandering again, and like then you're on this whole war
It's like a balloon that drifts off, though, right? Like you pull it. So, can you not see how this maybe would connect up with increasing your vocabulary and your technique things?
I do,
because it's not just
you get
clinch,
stuck on things where like this move isn't working, and you're like, oh my God, this move worked against someone bigger than this person. Why is it not working here?
Yeah.
And it's like not working is a natural state for things to be in. Things don't work.
Totally.
And then they're going to work later, or you move to the next thing, or it's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to arm hook this person.
Yeah, you just talk about this sometimes when you come home. You're like, oh, I was totally getting this great lock on Make, but I can't. I wasn't locking it on.
Can't do it on
Caraval. He's taller, thinner.
And I can't get
whatever
my fucking head under Caraval's head because he's so tall.
Right?
And it's like, getting the head under is such an amazing thing, but it's the same thing with Vipassana. Like, I would love to wake up and have a super, like, I'm having a very easy time focusing on the now and the present moment of what position the body is in, what the mind is doing, and like, oh, that's very easy. But then you're just going through a routine. You're not actually looking at what's happening. You're supposed to be observing what's actually happening. So to have the opportunity to practice Vipassana when you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're tired, when you actually don't want to be sitting there, like all of these different things, teaches you way more about the expansive possibilities in which you can pull it back to that's perfect.
And it's very cool that part of technique is technique not working. Like nobody thinks that. Nobody thinks that though. Everybody's like, the technique is this beautiful hip turn kick, right? You're always moving towards the perfection.
Right, like you can't turn your leg on your hook because then people can leg kick you. But people can still leg kick you if you don't turn your foot on the hook. Like, you can still get leg kicked.
Yeah, that's one of our favorite pet peeves about this, don't pivot that lead leg. It's so ridiculous. And then, what are we at? We're in 2 minutes. Can you real quick throw in this? I really want to get this little technical thing, how you were moving between the long clinch and the lock with Banks lock and Tanadet. That experience of like how you were figuring out the root of a technique. Do you remember we were talking about that?
No.
You were saying I understand the root of it. So that, well, anyways, talk about how you were moving, how these are two complementary things.
I was clinching with Meg, who outweighs me by like 10 kilos or more maybe. But he's short and pudgy and not super strong. So he can use power on me and weight on me at times, which makes the risk real in the things that I'm working on. But it's not scary to the point where I like won't risk it for the consequence or whatever. And with him, I didn't even like decide to do it. I just started transitioning between Banks lock, which is very tight, and then the long guard, which is also very tight, but very like expanded out. So it's like this accordion kind of thing going on. And I was clinching with him for about 15 or 20 minutes straight before Pinu saved him by giving me Carabao as another person so that I was man in the middle. But I think in all that time he threw like one knee because he just could not, with this constant expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction, he was so disoriented and frustrated and lost in the like, I don't know what to do in either state. Like if you stay in one, people can solve it eventually. But if you keep moving, it's like I can't target, like I can't see where you are.
What's so cool about this is that people know that in range control, in fighting in space, this is what you do. You change range.
Yeah.
You have close range weapons like hooks or elbows or knees, and then long range weapons, teeps, head kicks, and whatnot. And then as you change, if you can change range as a in space fighter, you're hard to deal with because the target is never where it quite was, where it was 5 seconds before.
Time is up.
It's okay. We have 1 more minute.
Okay.
The same thing happens in clinch.
Yep.
That you can accordion out space in clinch and be unsolvable.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's exciting to me is that you're also developing these like spatial freedoms that come with the territory of those dialectics. I don't know. I'm very excited by this. It feels like a new landscape is kind of opening up for you. And so what we're doing is we're training with Tanadet every month when we go up to Chiang Mai to keep the long clinch dialectic going. We're training with Karahat every month because he has this beautiful shouldery, slippery clinch style that also has a great waist throw, right? And then Diesel Noy will be back in the gym fucking teaching you knee shredding. Right. So it's kind of exciting. Okay, let's stop this thing and go to the next one. Okay. Camera battery change. Next topic. Okay, this is a really interesting topic. Let me get on the highway. One of the interesting things about this topic is we actually had a whole discussion of this on a past Muay Thai Bones podcast, which due to technical reasons did not record.
Yep.
So it's something we've talked about many times with ourselves, and I guess you and Emma have talked about. Me and Emma have talked about it. It's a regular thing of conversation, but that was actually a blessing that conversation didn't get fully recorded. Really, because now we have a better, more informed, more interesting take on it because of your experiences. And this topic is a huge one, and we'll probably visit it in future Muay Thai Bones because it is, I don't know, we have pet peeves about it. We feel like if this could be solved or improved on, the impact on female Muay Thai would be significant.
Yep.
Would be huge. And this is the thing, what we're talking about. What do world titles mean? And what we're talking about world titles, we're talking about professional world titles sanctioned usually by bodies like WPMF, WMO, WBC, WBO, right?
Yep.
In Muay Thai. And I guess do you want to jump in or should I keep going?
No, you keep going.
Okay.
I'll jump in for a second. The frustrating thing about them is that they are not organized. They are so poorly organized that the meaning that they're supposed to carry.
Well, it's almost like you make it sound like out of laziness they're not organized. It's the entire system of producing world title belts makes it so they cannot even be organized.
Yeah.
Or do you disagree? You have a stronger...
I don't know. Keep going. I was just interjecting that we're not just like shaking our fists meaninglessly at world titles. It's that there are actual fundamental disorganized reasons why the meaning cannot
but why do you say disorganized? When you say a person is disorganized...
What I mean is that there's no rankings. Like, if there's no rankings, what the fuck is a title supposed to mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you're not keeping track of where people are in a line and you just take two random people and smush them together for a world title, like what?
100%. But the reason why there's no rankings is it's not possible to rank. I myself came up with a pound-for-pound top 10 list of female Muay Thai fighters. It was almost impossible to create a top 10 because so many of the fighters don't even fight regularly.
Yeah, or at the weight they're supposed to be at. Anything.
Well, I don't know about that, but they also don't fight in Muay Thai. Like, is Anissa Mexon one of the great female Muay Thai fighters? She fights K1 now, like Glory. Same with Tiffany. Like, it's almost impossible to rank female fighters. One of the impossibilities is, unless you're closely connected to the living scene, you don't even know who the best female fighters are. If you're on the WPMF board, let's say, just picking a board in Japan, like you're helping organize a ranking. They had a pretty interesting website. They had kept a website where they kept rankings for a while. You have no idea who the top 10 Thai female fighters are in a weight class.
Yeah.
Like, there's no access to the knowledge base. Mm-hmm. It feels like you disagree with me here. Like,
keep going. There's no structure, even.
Yeah, and if we were given the task of structuring it, I'm not even sure how you could.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is what you're saying. If there's no ranking, if there's no sense of the top 5 fighters in the world at a particular weight class, then saying it's a world title with mixing two fighters together is just making something up.
Yeah.
And it's when you actually get close to knowing how these fights are matched, because Sylvie is often contacted as somebody by promoters who are looking for somebody for a world title fight.
Right. And we can usually give a couple of names. And we will give, this is the best option. These people are also this weight, whatever. They almost never choose the best option.
No.
Ever.
But many times they're just looking for literally anybody who's a Farang, a Westerner, to face a Thai.
Yeah, in order to meet the criteria of it being international. Or
Thais prefer really like this Thai versus Westerner as a title fight of an event. But sometimes it's the only requirement is that you are Westerner and you're the right weight and you're in Thailand.
Right.
So they don't have to fly you in from some other, these shows have limited budgets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you'd have to get a visa on a short notice and all these different things.
I feel like I'm talking too much on this. All you're basically doing is telling me,
Get to the point. We've talked about our problems with world title fights, which is that they feel empty and disorganized and unstructured, and so to give it a great deal of meaning feels invalid. And yet, I just fought for a world title.
Well, let's not go to that point yet, because first let's investigate the other point, right?
I thought we did, and you just said you were talking too much, so.
Okay.
What do you want to get to before getting to that I just fought for a world title?
Well, we talked 45 minutes on it last time without the second point. So I'm before we go to the second point, let's be thorough about the first point.
Okay. Are we recreating that conversation?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. People who do not have insight into how world title fights are organized kind of don't know what we're talking about.
Yes.
So we're trying to like shed some light.
Well, okay, this is something we talked about last time that is important, which is that female world titles are basically this weird
Yeah, we're talking about female fighting.
photocopy of male world titles. They're also kind of disorganized shit because there are so many sanctioning bodies now.
Yeah.
But originally, when there were a few, they were organized. You had to fight for position. You would lose position.
You would defend your belt.
Like, people knew what the boxing heavyweight champion of the world meant.
So you're talking about Muay Thai as modeled on boxing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if you are Lumpini champion, you are Thailand champion, you are heavyweight champion in boxing, WBC, like the green belt, like people know the green belt kind of thing, is like there's this recognition that carries this weight of like when you're saying I'm heavyweight champion of the world, people are like, I know what that means. Like people who aren't boxing fans know what that means to a degree. And so that kind of authenticity is a carryover from when it meant something, but now there are so many sanctioning bodies putting a belt on everything to sell the fight.
Are you talking about boxing now or Muay Thai?
I don't know boxing.
Okay, good.
In Muay Thai, there are a lot of sanctioning bodies. There are a lot of belts. You can be a stadium, you know, whatever local stadium, all these different things. They kind of cheapen the, like people think of belts as being this like super rare thing, but it's actually been saturated. So the way people feel about it versus the actual practice of it does not match. And then on top of that, you transition it over to women who are so disorganized that it's like even worse over on our side because it's so...
Well, disorganized again, but also there's also so many fewer competitors.
Yeah.
Like, if you're thinking about, to give a more concrete example, there's these all-women shows often that happen in Bangkok, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. I haven't seen one for a while, but mandatorily, they will have 3 world titles on the line.
Yeah.
It's a way to add juice to the show.
Yeah.
Who is fighting for those world titles is really like, contact the top gyms in Thailand that you have that the promoter knows and be like, who's in your gym?
Yeah. Do you have a 54 kilo girl?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you do, she's going to fight for a 54 kilo world title.
Yeah.
And there are particular gyms that have very strong mainline connections. So Santai right now is a very hot gym with very good connections. Their fighters will fight for world titles.
Yeah, Kusamrit was like
Kusamrit, which also promotes a lot of fights, used to have a lot more females, but it used to be the case that if you were training at Kusamrit for a year, you'd fight for 1 or 2 or 3 world titles. Teresa, you just interviewed Teresa Wintermere. When she was at Simbi many years ago,
on Phuket.
In Phuket, Simbi had a strong connection with the WMC, and a bunch of girls at Simbi fought for world titles in a 1 or 2, 3 year period.
Yep.
The thing about it is there's nothing nefarious about this. Like, if a promoter wants to put on a show and wants world titles, they're very limited in who they can even draw from.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do this? You call the people you know.
Yeah.
The people you know give you the names of people
that people they know.
Yeah, exactly. But it moves within a limited circle.
Yeah.
So I guess what we're really talking about here is not world titles are meaningless. They don't mean what we think they mean in terms of the boxing model, which itself is no longer the case, and even maybe in boxing, except in some, has less esteem even there. But it doesn't mean nothing. What it usually means is there's a pool of active female fighters who are pretty good.
Yep.
Thai and Westerners. And these 2 fighters were drawn from this pool of active female fighters that are within travel distance, and the matchup in that title fight is a matchup that also could have just happened in a local stadium.
Yeah.
Like, that matchup is not extraordinary. It's a good fight. It would be a good fight in Thailand.
Like, that's interesting.
That's an interesting fight.
match. Yeah.
So what the only difference really is because there's a belt on there, there's a different atmosphere of pressure,
Yes.
right? So there's something a little special about what's happening. So I guess part of what we're discussing here is a deflation and a concern about world title belts, and how sometimes the people in the matchup shouldn't even be there.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes, because they need to find somebody.
Yeah.
There was this incredible example. There's a lightweight boxing champion in Thailand, a Thai girl who's been world champion in I don't know what organization. Every year she fights for her belt.
Right. Because she has to.
She I don't know if she has to. They want her to. She's a very good fighter. There's very few small Western boxing people in Thailand. Every year they look for someone for her to fight.
Yeah.
And Sylvie gets contacted every year. There's a big bonus that goes to whoever can find this
It's like a headhunter
opponent,
fee,
headhunter
yeah.
bonus. And we've seen that they basically just want someone to stand in front of her and get hit.
Yes.
Like, they could be good, they could be not good.
It does not matter.
It does not matter. And one time they got so frustrated but not getting a Western fighter that they pulled the star, who's a Thai female Muay Thai fighter, and they changed her nationality to French.
Yeah, I think to be fair, they said that she was half Thai, like Lukrum. But they gave her the name Stephen Bernard because it was just a Farang name. They didn't even know it's not a woman's name.
but it was an international fight.
It had to be, yeah.
She was French. They
Yes.
made up that she was French.
Yep.
And they gave her a male name.
Yep. And she
Oddly
did
enough.
not weigh what the title's at. She was over for sure.
Oh, she's much larger. And probably her first boxing fight ever.
Yes.
And she fought a pretty good world champion. It's like mind-boggling.
She's not a boxer.
She's not a boxer.
It's not a boxing.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So, I don't know. This is a structural problem. Part of the reason we're talking about this is I don't know what the solution is. Like, the IFMAs is it's not actual pro Muay Thai, it's a different rule set and aesthetic, but it does have a structure built into it to some degree that provides some sense of achievement. But really in pro female Muay Thai, it's very, very hard to actually have a world title. You could have a world title fight. There was a WMC world title fight, I think, between Iman Barlow and Sophia Olafsson. That happened to be that's a kind of a world title fight.
Totally.
Like, those women, when they fought, were arguably the best in the world.
It's a good match.
But there was nothing about the process that couldn't have just put two other people in there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like accidentally you came up with a great world title fight.
Yeah.
But there was maybe 4 other world title fights that year with other people that were not either well matched or in it. Like, Sa Singh just won a world title against somebody who wasn't very experienced
and
at all.
there are also oftentimes last-minute replacements for a
that's true.
title because of visa issues, because someone was injured, like whatever the thing is. Like, if there were so many highly ranked women that you could totally just pluck 3 to like make a replacement for that title fight, that would be more amazing than the reality, which is that you just need to fill that slot.
So, bottom line, what we're focusing on is if there are no real changing rankings, and if you're not defending your belt, it's not really a world title. Like, you're calling it a world title just for hype.
It's like Miss Universe.
it is like Miss Universe.
Who else is competing?
And so if we keep expanding the number of belts and the randomness with which people become able to fight for them, we end up, it's like printing money.
Yeah.
You just get inflation, and then you don't really get a sense of specialness.
Yeah.
And you get people winning multiple world titles.
Dripping with belts.
I understand it's in celebration of the art and the sport, and there's some good qualities about it. But we really want female Muay Thai to like richly get better. And I don't even know what the answer is this, but if there's no rankings and you're not defending your belt, it's really not a world title. I mean, this actually, something we covered in the other thing was we became aware of this problem when we first moved here because Kaylee Reese had just won the WMC title,
which
something she
cherished and was like this huge life accomplishment
a life goal for her.
Yeah.
And then somebody else fought for it. Two people fought for it.
She went home to Australia, and they didn't want to like pull her from Australia or whatever. They didn't even ask her. They just had two other people fight for her title. That's her title.
Well, it should be.
Yeah.
But actually, in reality, that's not how belts work.
Because of how it is.
Yeah. And she retired out of frustration at that time. I think she came back. But it made us aware, this is when we first moved to Thailand, there's problems. And it's not picking upon any one organization. All of them have the same kind of problem, which is limited budgets, inability to rank accurately in real time. When Kaylee fights for her belt and then she goes to Australia and you want to have a world title, you can't fly her in like under budget. How do you handle that? I don't know there's really a solution, but it's something that you should think about. And for me, I'm like, being more sober about what a world title is a really healthy thing.
Yeah.
It's still a good fight. It's still two good fighters, generally.
And it's still exciting for the fighters fighting for it.
Yeah. So let's stop this and go to the next moment on this.
Okay.
And we'll go to the second half. Okay. We'll stop. So carrying on this conversation, the other part of it, something else we wanted to talk about as a dimension of this. And okay, if we can't solve the ranking problem or the selection problem, there's an additional problem that maybe we could solve or work towards, which is it's very difficult to even talk about this.
Yeah.
Because if there's a world title fight and you kind of
poo-poo it?
Yeah, well, I don't know, you don't have to poo-poo it. You just be like, well, these really are not, this is just a randomly thrown fight among a pool of fighters. You can't even really talk about it in a way without really denigrating the fighters.
It seems like you're picking on people. Like, it seems like you're like, these two people aren't up to snuff, whereas really you're talking about the entire system is not up to snuff.
Often the event itself, like the promoter and all the cards, all the matchups, how it was generated, and there's something real about that too. Like, if you're fighting for a world title, it feels hurtful to be like, this isn't a real thing.
Yeah.
If you won a world title, it feels hurtful to be like, that was a fake title. Because we can't even talk about it, like the only polite way to talk about world titles is to be like, way to go, that's amazing. Like, it's the emperor's new clothes kind of thing. Nobody can really say anything. Everybody involved in the system, they all know.
Yeah.
So there is a kind of like group hallucination.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that at all? Like, privately, like, I don't know, there's a frustration that this is the dominant thought. I don't know, I'm going to turn the ball over to you.
It's so hard because you think conflicting things. You can think two conflicting things.
Right.
You can be like, that fighter totally deserves to fight for a world title. But does this card and this world title and this opponent and this sanctioning body all coalesce to make that as meaningful as it should be?
I don't understand that. If you deserve to fight for a world title, then what's the problem?
Because it may not have all of the things in it that make it as concrete and sacred as it should be, or as the meaning of it is.
Yeah, but if you deserve to fight for a world title, then you should be fighting for one, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that your opponent is the opponent you would be fighting for a world title in order to give it the validity.
I see what you mean.
That you want it to have.
Yeah, but the problem isn't with that. I see what you're saying. But also the problem is you don't want to put down the opponent either.
No.
Like that's a big moment in that person's life to be fighting for a world title.
Yeah, and like, should Rocky be fighting Apollo? Not really, but it's amazing.
Right.
It's still an amazing fight.
Teresa told us, Teresa Wintermere, who's has an extraordinary number of fights in Thailand. Sylvie was interviewing her, and she was saying that when the Simbi fighters were fighting for WMC pretty organized, well-respected, like at the time was maybe the most respected Muay Thai organization. The Simbi fighters were fighting for world titles in Phuket. And she was like, we were fighting them at Bangla Stadium, which was known as a kind of like tourist stadium. And she was like, people were trashing the title fights because they were in Bangla Stadium.
Right, and she's like, but the officials were there, like all the things that need for that to be official were in place.
Yeah, or they might not have been. Like, that doesn't even matter in the ultimate sense, because the point was, people were degrading the titles before they were
context.
Because of the context. Yeah. And that feels awful.
Yeah.
And so we kind of lack the ability to talk soberly about the state of world titles without being mean.
Yeah.
Or dismissive, or there is a certain sense like we have to keep offering titles so that we can hype female fights, build female champion stories, right? Mm-hmm. And it almost feels like, well, if you don't hype the whole thing, then you're betraying the cause.
Right.
I don't know.
But there is also a quality to multiple time world champion female fighters. Like, Tanan Chinook has been female WPMF world champion for like 8 years.
Yeah, she's a very good example. But she's a very good example too, because she's Kusamrit connected, very powerful connection. She finds herself in world title fights because of her connections.
Yes.
She's also an incredibly skilled fighter.
Yes.
Who has a beautiful style. We count her as the most decorated, like the Pet Boon Chu thing, the most decorated female Muay Thai fighter. But part of it is just she's connected to a promoting line, and she might even get some favorable judging at times.
Yeah.
We've seen her win fights that she really shouldn't have, even though we have incredible respect for her. It's the combination of real achievement, mm-hmm. but also, I don't know, things aren't what they look like either.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's
right.
So complicated.
It's very complicated. So we want to talk about the other half. This is what I was cutting you off from early, because I wanted to set the left-hand column and now talk about the right-hand column, which is, you just fought for a world title yesterday, won the world title. It was the IPCC world title, an organization we had not heard of, which apparently is big in European fighting, and now it seems that they're connected to Infusion, and they also sanction Eastern promotions, it seems that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Eastern meaning Asian.
Asian, right. I don't know, we had a really positive experience about this, and it kind of was unexpectedly positive, because you don't think about belts
No.
at all.
No.
But we'll maybe talk about that part.
Part of it is what we've just spent 20 minutes talking about, which is like, how can you put a lot of stock in something that does not have a core to it?
It does not have a core to it. That's very interesting.
And also, I know so many incredible fighters who don't have a title, and not having a title does not make them lesser fighters. Like, it causes a great deal of pain to Krunu that he did not win that Lumpini title that he actually should have. And even though he knows he should have won it, and he has pride in that, the fact that he never got it is this, like, pain that he did not achieve something. Someone like Somrak, who is clearly a fucking incredible fighter, never even got to fight for a title. It's not like he fought for a title and didn't win it. He didn't even get to fight because
in Muay Thai.
of the politics of who gets to fight, who doesn't, who gets to have these connections, who doesn't, that kind of thing. And so because I'm aware of all of those things, I cannot, in my mind, have this fully settled belts are amazing thought. And it's also not the frame of what I'm aiming for. Like, you don't aim for 471 fights and belts.
Well,
like, they don't go together.
I'll say this from my perspective. Part of the reason why we started pursuing numbers in the beginning, other than your spontaneous, like, I want 50, like Sylvie, the other Sylvie, was there's nothing to shoot for. Like, a world title or a Queen's Cup title, whatever it was, is so politically structured and really does not really reflect the elite and the weight in the world, that there was no way to really reach for achievement that meant something that would propel you. And
it's also, numbers are very inarguable.
Yeah, so, well, they'll argue, who did you fight, blah, blah, blah. But your numbers are so explosive, it doesn't, again, explosive.
Yeah, ask me who
Michael
I fought
Bay.
with fucking 241 fights.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah. But the idea was reaching for something that really will change you in the path of doing it, and also help change Muay Thai. And belts were not, like, early on were like, not belts.
That's not it. Yeah.
Not belts. Like,
not where it's at.
It was almost like we don't even want to fight for a belt. And then we had that odd but beautiful experience of fighting for a WMC belt 3 weight classes above you.
Right.
You did not perform well in that
That's
fight.
like my version of how I fight for belts, is like with crazy circumstances. Like, it's never the expected.
I don't know if that's true, baby. I mean, the Faching Ryan belt was
pretty straightforward.
Amazing, beautiful experience. But that experience was a huge, like, Sylvie could not weigh in that weight class ever. Like, I don't know how you could even come close to it. And you fought a pretty good fighter, not the top elite of that weight class, on a huge show where Diesel Noy and Karahat were in your corner. It was a life-changing event.
Yeah, it was the last king's birthday.
The last king's birthday. It was an incredible thing to be a part of, but the belt part of it was completely manufactured in a weird way.
Yeah.
Which is not even a weird way. That's how belts get thrown together.
Except put a belt on it. Like,
yeah, and let's find two people. They couldn't find anybody of the right weight class, so they pulled Sylvie in because she can handle bigger fighters.
yeah.
So, I guess where were we going with that?
Well, we're talking about me fighting for a world title recently. We've gotten to that part of the conversation.
This is about how, before we were being like, belts aren't what you think they are. This is, belts are what you think they are. Like, I don't know.
Well, explain that. Explain why you say that.
Okay, well, this is the analogy I was using. When you win a fight, even if that fight was a fixed fight, or you got your ass kicked and you feel like you should have lost and were expected to lose, and then your hand gets raised. Like, even when you win a fight where you're like,
I should not have
won.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever the situation was, it still feels good. It still feels like an achievement.
There's a bit of perfume always.
Yeah, we call it perfume.
Yeah.
And it's because win, lose, officially decided is a social fact. It's what I'm calling. It's like it's a fact that cannot be altered. There's something about it that's really weird. Like, you can argue you shouldn't have won, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. Still won.
Yeah.
You still won.
It's a tick in that box.
In that box,
yeah.
and it's etched in fucking stone.
Yeah.
Winning a world title is like that. It's like, even if the matchup was dubious or random or whatever things surrounded the event, you winning, and also probably fighting for, but probably more so winning a world title is it's a social fact, and it is a change of status, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Kevin and I slightly disagree on this change of status thing.
Let's talk about this.
It's interesting because yesterday when I was talking to Teresa, we were talking about how speaking Thai shaped her experience. And she said that she thought that she was treated better or had like an improved experience by speaking Thai. But then she had this secondary thought that came after where she was like, I don't know that it matters that much. It's like how if you're a completely shitty person and you win, they love you. And you can be a great person and you lose and they hate you.
She's talking about Thailand.
She's talking about Thailand, like in your gym kind of thing. And that's not like my overarching experience, but I know exactly what she's talking about. Which is like, you can win a completely ridiculous title that's like the local stadium title, and Pinu will call you champion. Like he's a champion, and he's like 17 kilos, he's a little kid, like it's cute,
but
right?
It means something to him.
But it means something to him.
Totally.
And putting the picture on the wall means something. And like, I do not look to fight for titles. I don't put a lot of stock in titles, all these things. Going into this fight, knowing that it was a world title fight, I'm not like puffing myself of this, like, this is going to mean a change in who I am, but I wanted to fucking put a picture on the wall. I wanted the kind of everyone loves you when you win.
Which you don't get a lot of.
I do get a lot. Even though I win quite a lot. So I have multiple thoughts about this. You saying that it's a change of status, I don't fully agree with, because while I get to put that picture on the wall, and so when he's in a good mood, Pinu will point out to strangers, that's my champion, and make me feel wonderful when he says it.
That's a change of status. That is a change of status.
A momentary one, but it's the same thing where Thais will like talk shit to your face, but like sing your praises behind your back. When a stranger comes in and he's like, look at this picture, that's my champion, because everyone is uplifted by me having won this title, because it's this like topical thing that you can put in newspapers, put a picture on the wall, have a belt, like all these different things. My day-to-day life in the gym is not going to change. I'm not like now a champion when I walk in.
You don't know that because Pinu might be even more invested in your progress. He's become very invested in the last 6 months. I feel like he's stepped it up.
It's been great.
Yeah. He might step it up more.
Yeah, I'm on the poster now.
No joke.
No joke.
Like this is why I think you don't think there's a change of status, is that you spent a lot of time in the grind. And a lot of the grind is very frustrating for you. And you're like, this is not gonna lift my burden. My burden is I'm gonna go back in the gym and I'm gonna grind.
Yeah, I'm still gonna face people too big for me. I'm still gonna face people who are favored by all of these different...
That's because you live in the grind.
Well, okay, this is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
That my mentality going into this fight.
Yeah.
I am not like, I want to win a world title, I want to be called a world champion, which is what a lot of people, when they want to win a belt, win the title, have the title world champion, that's important to them.
Yes.
That part wasn't important to me.
Yeah.
the part that was important to me, this is a little bit embarrassing
Whatever.
to admit, is that I am motivated by shame and embarrassment and guilt, which we've talked about before. You can go back and watch previous episodes of this. I did not want to see pictures of Nong Benz, my opponent, all over Muay Siam saying she'd beat me.
Yeah.
Because they would. She is totally connected to the northern Muay Siam.
Yeah.
She is a favorite. She's beautiful. She's cute. She's all these things.
And she's a good fighter.
And she's amazing. And she's totally had a chance to win that fight. She is big and strong and skilled and all these different things. Her fucking knees were hurting me more than they've ever hurt before. I did not, because, okay, I win, they will announce it. I'm like waiting for Muay Siam to come in on Saturday.
Yeah, but
it's not going to be fucking all over the internet the way it would be all over Thai internet if it was Nong Benz.
Yeah.
And it's a nice picture. They'd put a picture of her kicking me in the head or some shit, but it would be everywhere and it would have my name. It would be like, she beat Sylvie, and everyone would be like, oh my God, she's so amazing because she beat Sylvie.
Well, that's the other half of it.
Even though I'm so embarrassed to have that stuff in the paper all the time, the part that I'm missing is for me to be outweighed by 19 pounds and they still say, Pommy is amazing, she beat Sylvie.
It's
and
incredible.
Don't mention that she's 19 pounds bigger, is because I'm this person to beat.
Yes.
Like, you've done something if you beat Sylvie.
You're Ramon Deckers.
No, Ramon Deckers was bigger.
Yes, but everybody was like,
beat the Farang.
you gotta beat Farang, he's fucking scary.
Yeah.
You're right, he had a weight advantage usually, but yeah.
So, going into that fight was not, I want the title of world champion, I want a belt. I wanted a picture on the wall, and I wanted not pictures of Nong Benz all up in Muay Siam.
But I was ringside on the corner buckle filming.
Yeah.
The thing is live streamed, and Sylvie will put up a commentary on it soon. I was feeling that there was a tide of emotion there. It was an event.
Yes.
And then
there's pressure.
And then something about the beltishness of it added a degree. Like, there was a girl who had just won the belt before you got in the ring.
Yeah,
like,
taking photos.
Yeah,
and
like
photos.
yeah,
Huge
and
group.
so there was a thing that there was an emotional tide that you had to surf.
That's the thing.
To win
is
that fight.
Even though there's like no core
Yes.
to the apple, it's like the empty apple.
Yeah.
It's still this big shiny apple that like I knew my opponent was gonna fucking fight me for real because there's a belt on the
But
line
she
and
fights
she wants
you
it.
for real all the time.
She
baby.
does, but you know that there's like an additional
maybe an additional 5%.
because there's more pressure on her. There's more pressure on me.
Yeah.
There's more pressure on the situation. There's like there's shine on things.
So we're saying.
And Dang has been in my corner when I've beaten on Ben's before.
Yeah.
I've never seen him glow for me beating her the way he glowed for me beating her. I was glowing wearing that belt that weighed fucking like 15 pounds.
I want to say I captured it in a couple photos, but you had to have been there to see it. Sylvie was glowing with the belt on by the audience while people were taking pictures. I've never seen my wife look that way in all our years together. I've seen you in all kinds of circumstances. There was a prideful, pride is too strong of a word, but prideful, almost like movie star type glow about you, like 1950s movie star, like you were making your own light in your face. I think it's something about every fight when you like fight hard and there's real risk. It's a huge emotional surge. Like, fighters go into states that we don't go into every day. They're peak human states.
Yep.
And then to come out of the ring and to have this symbolic moment where the belt is put on you does something to that emotion that's in you after a fight that coheres it in a way that would be different if you just kind of like took your wraps off and, oh, that was a good fight, Sylvie, and you got some compliments. That the social fact of the belt made a difference, like a psychological difference. So while we were talking about before, belts aren't what you think they are, which I think was all true. They also are what you think they are in the real state of what they mean to you, the gym, for the people involved.
Yeah.
So maybe they're not what you might think they are on the world view, like giving people structure, like social structure across continents. But in the personal sense, like for Thais, belts mean a lot.
Yeah.
Like anything shiny, they're like, put it on the wall.
Yeah.
And it means something.
Yeah.
And that's what it's kind of interesting to have experienced the like opposite of how we generally. I was personally. Were you surprised? I was personally surprised how good it felt.
I didn't analyze it in the moment, but
now.
like I was telling you, there was a delay in my remembering that it was for a belt. Like like when we got into the ring, they totally like walked the thing up and like they're talking about it the whole time, and like the announcer kept repeating over and over again, we have 3 title fights tonight, like this whole thing, like it was a big draw.
Yeah.
And the audience coming to watch wanted to watch title fights and like all these different things. When I was doing my Ram Muay, and I talk about this in my voiceover, the moment for me when I know what I'm focused on, or if I'm focused, is when the Ram Muay music first starts and you bow to your corner. When you bow to your corner, you touch your head to the ground and you think 3 authorities. Generally, it's your parents, your teacher, and the king. I think of 3 teachers. I think of Master K, Krunu, and then that third one will often be either Karhat or Diesel Noi, depending on like what I'm trying to get out of the fight.
Yeah.
But when I do that, I know how focused I am. Like if I'm like, oh, who's the third one gonna be? I'm like not focused.
Yeah.
In this fight, I thought of Bamrung,
Right.
who's Kranu's father, because I had, for the first time ever in 5 years of being at this gym, asked for a blessing for him to bless me before the fight, which he does for the boys when they go to Lumpini and Rajadamnern. So I had put weight in this fight before I even left for it by asking for that. And so when I was bowing to the corner and thinking of him, I was securing that weight to what this was, but I did not think about the belt in the fight.
Right.
So when I knocked her out and I put my hand up and I'm like, she's not getting up, my hand was already up, and then there was this like slight delay when I go, oh, and I won the belt. Like I get a picture for the wall of the gym.
Yeah.
It was like secondary, and I think that's when I got really excited.
Yes.
It felt really good.
Yeah, it was like an additional huge bonus for a hard-fought fight. Also, we should say that in your experience of belt status change recognition, you had one amazing experience, which was several years ago. You fought Chiang Rai for the 105-pound Northern Muay Siam title. You fought her,
and she was the current holder of the belt. So
well,
this was like,
you fought her in her hometown of Chiang Rai.
Yes.
You, out of weird coincidence, had just fought her
4 days before.
No, more. You fought her 3 times in
a
the
row,
month.
but I had just fought her 4 days before.
Yeah, but 3 times in the month before you fought her and beat her in very close fights.
Yep.
And so you were like, it's very hard to beat somebody repeated times because they figure out, they were very close fights.
Yeah.
They figure out how to win. And we're going to her hometown
to fight for her title.
For her title, the one she held, and you won it really decisively. And it was a marvelous performance. And then, ridiculously, you guys can read about it. We'll link it in the notes. It was stripped of her a couple of days later.
Because I'm not Thai.
Because technically, it was only Thais can hold this, which is fair enough.
Yep.
But
they told me that after.
Well, if Fa had won, she would have been defending the belt. Like that, nothing would have been said. And they put the belt on her. The Muay Siam people put the belt on her. It was really a technicality.
The officials were there, yeah.
Yeah. for some reason, somebody politically intervened, and we're going to call this and strip the belt from Sylvie. So that was actually this amazing performance and achievement against a very, very good fighter, and against all odds. And then you had the belt taken from you. So it was kind of like the universe is like, well, you're not going to get status change yet.
Yeah.
And it meant something.
That meant a lot, yeah.
It meant something to have lost it on that technicality, which means it meant something to have it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of weird thing. It's like
if it feels bad to lose it, then
then it means something, right? And yeah. I think that's the thing to think about with these world titles is if they were taken from you, from that fighter, it would mean something.
Yeah.
So they mean something in what they are. Maybe we just hope that we can do something to build a larger concept of what a world title is.
Fill in that center a little bit.
You get the core going. Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. Let's move on to the next segment. Did you start?
Yes.
Okay. On to the next subject. Switching it up. What? Can you take the lead on this for me?
So, I don't even know how to start. We're very excited because we are bringing Namkabuan Nongki Paihuyu, who is considered by some to be the best fighter from the Golden Age. He's very well-rounded. He's incredible. We're going to bring him down to Pattaya for 3 days to do what Dialects did of being like an advisor to training and then offering privates as he can. And
we're calling this Legends in Residence because now this is becoming a thing that we're doing.
Right.
It's not just Dialects.
Right.
Through the support of our patrons,
right,
the strength of that support, we're now kind of creating these kind of gym opportunities.
Right. But the impetus for this in bringing Dialects in the first place was to take this legend and this time capsule and kind of just incredible energy of a man and all his technique, all his ability to teach, all of this stuff, and inject him into a living, breathing Thai Muay gym with like active stadium fighters, so that on these two ends, I just wrote a post about it, and I said that it's like a sail that has a rip in it. When you connect those two sides of living, active, young Muay Thai fighters and these
Thai boys,
aging Golden Age fighters who often are not in gyms anymore, and you stitch those two ends together, the boat flies. Like it can catch the wind in a way that separate it just can't.
Totally.
And our experience with Dialects was fucking hell, that works. Like it's amazing. And so we're trying it again on a much smaller scale with Namkabuan. Dialects came for a month. Namkabuan's coming for 3 days. And hopefully we'll be able to repeat it. And,
well, one thing to say, Namkabuan also is outside of Muay Thai completely.
Yes. He runs a restaurant.
Super successful restaurant in Karat.
Yeah.
He has enjoyed the Muay Khao Summit that he came to and the 4 Legends seminar that we did so much that he actually is like asking Sylvie. I mean, this came out of him saying, Sylvie, do you have anything?
Can I tell this story?
Yeah, please.
So, Namkabuan's very cool. Like, he's just a cool guy. He's very suave. He's very charming. I went and trained with him in Karat for the first time probably 5 years ago. It was a long time ago. But he does not train people. Like, he's a good teacher, but that's not what he does.
He's actually a great teacher, but he's not in gyms. So
I worked with him, and I think that he got this, like, taste for really liking this process. And so when we did the 4 Legends seminar in Bangkok, which was him, Charchai, Dialects, and Karahat, he almost immediately after that event was like, Sylvie, when's the next one? He loved it. And so pretty recently he sent me a message and he was like, I'm really free, I'm not doing anything. If you have anything coming up, I'd really like to do something. And I was like, I don't have anything right now, but I'll keep you in mind. But we did want to do something like this, of of bringing legends down to legends in residence,
Well,
but we didn't have like a seminar.
We were thinking the Dieselnoid event was so awesome. Like, this is something we should build on.
Right.
On smaller scale.
So then it was after training, and I was lifting weights with Kranu, and we were chatting as we do. And he just kind of brought it up himself. He was like, maybe we could, every couple months or something, bring one of your legend friends in as like.
Oh, I thought
like
he mentioned Namkabuan.
He said Namkabuan.
So he actually.
But he meant like what we mean, which is like bringing, like cycling people in. And my eyes fucking shot open, and I was like, really? Because Namkabuan called me, and I've been wanting to do something. Can I bring Namkabuan down? He likes Namkabuan a lot. They're the same age.
Yeah.
And the first time I ever heard Namkabuan's name was when Kranu caught my kick and plowed me all the way across the ring, screaming Namkabuan to reference him. And when I looked him up on YouTube, then I knew what that was.
It's a famous move that Namkabuan was known
That's
for.
now illegal.
Yeah.
But so by getting this kind of prophetic or like total fate thing of like Namkabuan contacting me, us wanting to do this, and then Kranu being like, hey, maybe we could do this thing. It's like the same idea.
Often it's the hardest part is the Thai part, where you're not quite sure how doing this will affect the culture of the gym.
Right, or relationships, or like how Kranu feels about any of those things happening.
Right, and so to have him signal on his own was like pretty remarkable.
Yes.
And what we're able to do with this is we pay, the gym is not doing it. We pay Namkabuan to be there every day.
Yeah.
We pay for his hotel.
Right.
We basically are bringing in him to create an opportunity for everybody.
And it's an injection into a space where it's already great training. It's already happening. Like, it's not dependent upon what he's doing.
It's not a seminar.
He's just frosting. That's incredible, rare frosting that's injecting energy and technique and knowledge and experience into this space.
And of all the legends of the seminars we've done, he is by far, to me, by far the best teacher. Like, engaged. This technique, do this, like, this energy that he has is he wants to teach.
I'm really excited to see how he'll play with the styles of the boys who are already at the gym, like what he'll see and work on with them.
Can you fix this camera? It looks like it's tilted a little bit.
Up or down?
Looks like it's this way. I'm going to take a technical, maybe, do you see what I'm talking about? Yeah. Oh, that's good, I think. We'll see it on the replay. Yeah, they just got a huge infusion by Dieselnoid, who's like a forward marching, do not rest tornado of energy. And now,
we call him the Thresher.
And now Namkabuan, who is this like super slick, athletically explosive,
but like powerful.
Yeah, powerful.
Like very masculine.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see that layered on there, and especially how he'll interact with Bank, who has a kind of like power, athleticism.
Yeah, I think that his style fits really nicely with Bank, and Bank, when he's in the gym, plays around a lot, but then in the ring doesn't like to risk. I think that taking Namkabuan's finesse, that's like you take what you're playing around with, but then have the audacity to do it in the ring, I think will be amazing on Bank.
And it's interesting, Bank is also a good low clinch fighter, and they were like, don't do that anymore because it doesn't look good in today's style.
Well, they're moving him away from it because if you don't succeed, you can lose. So just be really fucking successful at it, right?
Well,
make those body throws.
You're missing the point. Namkabuan is the body throw expert.
Yes.
He is like, it was how he fucking shut fights down.
Yeah.
He would have all this beautiful style and explosive stuff, and then in the fourth round he'd just wrap you up endlessly and then dump you on the ground. It would be interesting to see if a technique that is kind of like out of fashion a little bit in Lumpini style, if Namkabuan can like elevate it in Bank to the point where it can be used.
Yeah, and it's natural to bank, so it would be
Totally.
great to have him be able to do something that he likes doing.
It'd be very interesting to bring back an old style, like golden age. It's like nobody really does that throw anymore.
Get the announcers being like, I haven't seen that in a long time.
So this is part of the Legends in Residence thing that we're doing. Diesel Noi will be coming in August, doing the same thing 3 days a week for 6 months.
So excited about this.
We've gotten somebody to sponsor the hotel Muay Thai residence, so we're not covering the hotel, but we're going to be covering Diesel Noi's expenses and paying him every day. You can just come to the gym and get privates with Diesel Noi or Namkabuan. He's going to be there next week. By the time you watch this, it might be too late unless you're in Thailand. But we're kind of trying to create this kind of, I love your analogy of stitching the two parts of the sail together.
Yeah. My private with Namkabuan is one of my favorites that I've ever done. I love the way he teaches, I love the way he thinks, I love what he sees. I like his style a lot.
Yeah, he has like a joyfulness about him.
He kept trying to get me to look in his eyes, which a lot of Thai men want you to do, because it's this like kind of...
Not just Thai men, great fighters want you to do.
Confidence and masculinity.
Yeah.
I've gotten a little bit better at it, but at the time I was like, you are too handsome, sir. I cannot look you in the eye.
It's not the only reason, baby. You do not like looking in the eye, but maybe that'll be a sign of your transformation.
Maybe.
When you like stare your opponent down in the ring.
If you can stare at Namkabuan, you can stare at anybody.
And so we'll also try to do something like film some stuff. We're going to film a library session and maybe try to get patrons extra. We'll shoot slow motion with him. And
we have a slow motion of his knee that's up on YouTube right now that you should go look at.
It's incredible.
Getting more of his moves in slow motion.
And we'll probably put a Kai Muay diary together. I don't know if he can come to the stadium or not.
I'll pay for his gas. He can go.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and then he can bring us some mugata as a...
Do what?
Mugata is his, the restaurant is the type of food he serves. It's like the soup thing where you like cook your own.
It's like a barbecue?
Hot pot.
Oh yeah, that's right. So that's a quick little thing. We're moving on to the next.
If you're in Thailand, come to Pattaya. And if you're in Pattaya, come to Petrungrung. Don't miss it. Right?
It'll be very special.
Okay.
Oh, baby, do you want one of these?
No.
Okay. Next segment. That was a short one. We're going to get into a larger concept here. A little bit. How do you want to do this? Do you want to talk about the injury itself and then the larger idea, or go the other way?
I guess injury itself first. Once you mention it, that's all people are going to be thinking about.
Okay.
I hurt my shoulder. I hurt my shoulder 2 fights ago. And I don't know if it's like a use injury or if there was a particular moment that strained it in the fight or any of these things.
2 fights ago.
2 fights ago. But when I came out of it, my left shoulder, like deep in there, was really, really hurting. And I went home and, did some stuff on it. I was like taking massages and trying to stretch it out and things like that a little bit, but not in a hardcore way. I was having a hard time doing certain movements, but I was still clinching through it because you have to keep training. And it's basically just this like occasionally letting crew know that I was having a hard time in clinching because my shoulder hurt, like just that this is still a thing kind of thing. Crenew's like me in that he's like, yep, shit hurts, like that's all right, we work around it, we keep going, like don't worry about it kind of thing. And it wasn't that big a deal, but then after this most recent fight, which was a couple days ago, a new part of my shoulder is hurting even more than that part did. And I don't know if it's because of that injury causing me to move in a different way in the clinch, or whether something strained it in a different way and it would have happened anyway. I don't know. I actually don't care that much.
One thing to say that when you fight much larger opponents, there's moments in the fight where you probably will exert yourself to just try to neutralize size.
Yeah.
And the possibility of injury is probably increased.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So between the first injury and this one, Kevin had found this thing about
Joe Rogan.
From Joe Rogan, I guess. Yeah.
I think so.
But it's this doctor who has a school of thought that our anatomy is meant to hang the way that like monkeys hang from trees. And so you can actually release a great deal of shoulder injury, burden, hurting, whatever kind of problems you have in your shoulders can actually be remedied by just hanging. So I started just hanging at the gym 30 seconds at a time, but doing maybe like 4 or 5 sets if I could in a training session. So I do not have a lot of time in hanging to tell you how all of this is developed. But given the pain in my shoulder, given how much 30 seconds of hanging on a bar, just hanging there like you're on a jungle gym, it releases so much in my shoulders. I was like, this is a thing.
What does release feel like? Like, what does that mean?
It's like popping your back or something. It's like when your back hurts because of the way you're sitting, and then you invert yourself or hang from a bar, and it like releases the tension. It totally released the pain in my shoulder from that first injury. I have not been able to hang with this new one. One, because I didn't have anything to hang from. We've been in hotels where like the shower curtain will not hold me, and I'm not able to like jump up and finger grip on door jambs or things.
Yeah. That's something I want you to do, baby. I want you to jump up on little like hotel door jambs.
Start my parkour career. So I'm gonna try hanging with this, but the reason we're talking about these injuries is not because it's important to focus on these injuries, but because when you are a professional fighter and you're training and fighting all the time, you kind of always have something.
Always.
And these ones, in particular, have sent us down a new channel with this hanging thing.
Okay.
As a clincher, your shoulders are fucked a lot.
Are they?
Like, I do not have a lot of flexibility in my shoulders. Like, when I'm trying to, like, reach behind myself or whatever.
If you adopt this regimen, which I think the doctor, we got the Kindle book, it'll be linked in the notes. If you adopt, he has a whole regimen of strengthening and prevention.
Yeah.
It might be something that, as a clinch fighter, you want to do.
Yes. And I definitely am into preventing unnecessary, I don't know what the word is for it. Unnecessary damage or alteration or whatever. I'm damaging myself all the time. That's part of what this life that I've chosen is. This is not a like, you should rest it and stop forever. You're damaging yourself. You're going to do whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm always damaged. There's going to be damage all the time. That's how this life works. But when it's unnecessary because you could have done something to help along the way, that's a problem. So, like Kevin's been giving me a little bit of a hard time for not hanging yet on this.
Yes.
There was a fight many years ago where I broke my hand in a fight because the gloves at the stadium were complete shit. It was like basically putting a towel around my hand and fighting with that.
Yeah, the shittiness of the glove made the injury. Like, if you had just been barehanded, it would have been fine.
It would have been fine. I broke my hand, got in the car, drove up to Chiang Mai, which was like from where we were a 14-hour drive or something, and fought the next day. But the thing about that trip was the entire time we were in the car, I realized that I couldn't
10 hours.
I couldn't do anything with my hand that was like this, so I couldn't open anything, I couldn't like turn a door handle. So I found the things I couldn't do and just slowly for 14 hours was like continuing to keep as much range of motion as I could. When you take a terrible leg kick and it hurts to bend your leg, fucking bend your leg all day. Like, if I go out and fight and get leg kicked and they only have squat toilets on the way home, I hate it, but it means I'm going to be bending all day instead of sitting in the car and letting it lock up. I have not been letting this not lock up. Like, I need to keep the range of motion in this while it's trying to lock up early, while it still hurts, not, oh, I'll wait until it feels better and then I'll start working on it.
And Corey Anderson was just on Joe Rogan, and he talked about how he like disjointed, he thought he dislocated a finger.
Yeah.
And he couldn't relocate it, so he just kept moving his hand over and over and over again against the pain of it. There was great pain, and he he later found out he had ruptured a tendon, and his tendon had actually like rolled up his finger.
Curled up.
And he has this fucked up finger now. And what was interesting was, and you see that there's a Joe Rogan on this with him. He's like, the doctors were like, if you had not been moving your finger like that, it would have frozen.
Yeah, you just have a locked finger.
And which would have been a problem as a fighter. And they also are like, I don't even know how you're moving your finger because that tendon is the thing that moves the finger. That's like the pulley.
Right.
So
the body found a way.
The body found a way to kind of work through a torn tendon, which this is not medical advice. This is there. No doubt are
Not a
injuries. No doubt there are injuries where you're like, rest or don't do that.
Yeah.
Right. But our experience has been that move towards the pain. And sometimes it involves finding the edges of the pain.
Yeah.
Like maybe the one thing that is so painful, you don't do that.
Right. Well, okay. So example,
Right,
I fought, my shoulder is all torn up now. And then the day after my fight, I went and did a patron session. And the thing is, like, I cannot clinch with this. Like, I can't lift my arm up to the position that I need it to be in. Like, I'm not moving towards the pain just to make it hurt.
Yeah.
So, but it's seeing where those
What
edges
the boundaries are, yeah.
So in this session, instead of forcing this arm to lock all the time because that hurts, I had to lock with my right hand, which I don't lock with. And going southpaw, I tried for years to lock, for a year, to lock with my right arm.
Right.
I just can't do it because I automatically go with my left. Now that my left is injured and I have to lock with my right, maybe now I'll start locking with my right. Like, it's an opportunity.
Right.
And I was able to do that session working around that injury. People think that working around something means completely immobilizing it or like taking complete rest or something. Working around something means finding where those edges are and keeping your toes kind of close to the line.
Yeah, and the
without
line might
doing
move,
further
and the
damage.
line might move.
I did lock on the side a couple of times and was like, I have no power in it. I can't push my shoulder forward.
Right.
So if this were a real situation where I'm actually trying to lock someone, I'd have to go on this side.
Right. But staying engaged with your injury is part of it. And this is not without risk. Sylvie, after she had broke her hand, we didn't go to the doctor. We knew it was probably broken, and Sylvie just trained through it and fought. I think you took like a month and a half or 2 months off, the longest time ever, and then just fought with it and trained with it, and you probably re-fractured it a couple of times.
I still have problems with my wrist occasionally.
In training, yeah. But there's this thing where you're always exploring, you're towing the line of what is possible and maintaining a relationship with the pain.
Yeah.
And this goes towards the like deeper philosophical thing about, you talked about what are you willing to suffer for, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea is life is full of suffering. Like, that's actually a Buddhist truth.
Life is suffering.
Life is suffering,
Yeah.
right? So it's really not whether you're going to suffer, but what are you going to suffer for?
Yeah.
Like, what can you donate your suffering to? Can you talk a little bit about your experiences of donating suffering to things, or what does that mean to you? You've used the phrase before.
I think when I made that video where I was talking about it, it was like a vlog. It was right after I had fought Zaza and was like feeling really shitty about myself. And my suffering was this very hardcore, emotional, self-doubting, I am not where I want to be or where I thought I was, like shame, embarrassment, like all the levels of suffering that you can have. And so it put me in this place that was questioning, like, do I want to keep doing this? Like, am I worthy of doing this? Am I any good? Is it?
She was fucking 8 kilos on top of you. Like, she was a huge opponent physically. I just want to throw that in there.
Okay.
You don't ever grade yourself on a curve.
No.
You're like, I should be able to handle somebody 8 kilos bigger than me.
Which is one of the reasons I suffer the way that I do.
That's why I'm throwing this in as a small correction to the audience.
Okay.
To let you know. You think this is wrong to say?
No, I just don't think that it's important to the point.
Okay.
Which is that, maybe because I do not give myself credit, which would reduce this suffering in some way. I'm just suffering and being like, do I even want to keep doing this? Am I worthy of keeping to do this?
Yeah.
And I came to this place that was, there are things that are worth their suffering. Love is like that. Family is like that. Passion projects are like that, where if you're an artist, it's not like I just get to express myself all day and it's so easygoing. You suffer for your work. Like, your work is hard. You do doubt yourself all the time. Your hand cramps all the time. You're not getting out of it what you're trying to. You're stifled in your expression of yourself. All those things hurt. But because of your love, because of your passion, because of all of these things, you are willing to suffer for that thing. And so the meaning of life, or like finding meaning in your life, is finding those things that you are willing to suffer for.
And it seems that in suffering, you give meaning to them.
Right.
It's like the tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of revolution. I don't know what the quote is.
Who's that from?
What?
I don't know that quote.
Yeah, it's a founding father of America, but basically you have to go to war and suffer and die to have liberty.
Right.
The blood of that war waters the tree of freedom. But there's this feeling like, in me watching you, like when you were fucking flexing that hand for 14 hours, going to go fight a fight, because we didn't want to cancel a fight, and if we canceled the fight, we would
lose the relationship,
the trust in the relationship with the promoter. So it wasn't just that fight, but it was 5 fights, 10 fights that could be at risk. And it was just like, there's no question that we're going to go there. But you were just, without any conversation, you were like moving that fucking hand. You're like, I am not letting this freeze up on me.
Which I didn't have experience in. I didn't do that because I never had that before.
You made that shit up because it was like, I am not going to be repressed or stopped.
Yeah.
And this is a crazy, wonderful thing to me. I'm like, when you did that, you suffered for the ability to fight frequently, and you made fighting frequently worthy, like, of value. You donated suffering to it. But a lot of people are like, you don't know the grind I've done, right? Like, a lot of people work very hard at all kinds of things in the world. And there's a feeling like, oh, the grind is this, like, forgotten, nobody knows but me, what happened kind of thing. And it's true. But in you knowing that you devoted that, you give great gift to the meaning of that action.
Yeah, it's also not saying you don't know what I've suffered for to be here, you don't know the sacrifices I've made to be here, the grind or the hard work to be here, implies that you're on this landing spot. Don't fucking land, man. Like, you don't know what I'm suffering for to keep moving, to not be on this spot. Like, being on this spot scares the shit out of me. Like, throw a grenade if it's what it takes to get off that spot, but do not stay on your spot and reminisce about how hard you used to work to get there.
Totally.
Like, it does not, like, now I've accomplished it.
But this was the argument that the argument we had the other day about your shoulder is like, I wanted you to suffer for Clinch. I wanted you to donate to that dark god so that your Clinch development, which I think is going off the fucking charts, gets that sacrifice. Like, I'm inspired by your own history of devotion. That's kind of where I was coming from it.
Yeah, that's not how you express.
I know, because I don't always express things. If I had had the, like, words and path maybe it would have been a more successful communication, but I'm saying it now so you can see what I was feeling and thinking, like, fucking hell, you do remarkable things when water finds its way with you around pain.
Yeah.
Like, it's really amazing. You just find this way. It doesn't mean that there's no pain, there's no boulders. You just find your way around pain in a really inspiring way.
Yeah. But there's also this, one of the things that led to our argument, or was involved in our argument, was that in the same way that you don't like grind for a minute and then find your landing spot and it's all this memory of what got you there, is that if you have pain that's telling you these are your limitations, you don't fucking blast through it one day and then be like, okay, well, I did that one thing. You're now going to be training on an injured shoulder for like 2 weeks. You have to be...
It could be 5 years.
Yeah, but you have to be feeling around that limitation in a long-term, slow burn way, not in a like, I got through one day of hard training and now I'm a boss.
But I'm like, don't let that hand freeze up.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't let it freeze up. Because I think what happens early on in an injury is it freezes up, not just physically, but emotionally. And now you're like, I got a bad shoulder. And I got a bad shoulder becomes the story you tell yourself as an athlete for 5 years, 7 years. And it just gets worse and worse. And should I have surgery? And should I do this? And I do these things to try to get rid of it. And I feel like it's very dangerous to create these narratives for yourself long term.
Yeah.
And the way that you responded to your broken hand, even though you have problems with your wrist now too, and wasn't the smartest, and could have gone to the doctor if we had no funds at the time. Not something we were going to do, but the way you kind of like worked your way around it, the way you started elbowing on that side instead of punching. You're like, I'm not going to punch with that hand for 6 months or whatever. It was like really cool to see you kind of like hunt for the spaces that were available to you.
Yeah.
And it expressed your character as a person and as a fighter. That it was very inspiring. And so to me, that's where you're at with your shoulder. This could be with you for 5 years, I don't know, but maybe this hanging thing will gift you. Like, there's a lot of testimonials that this is kind of a miracle.
Yeah.
So maybe this thing will gift you with a way to prevent shoulder injury for the rest of your career.
Yeah, or just helps you suffer better.
Like, helps you deal with it, right?
Yeah.
Anything else on what you're willing to suffer for in fighting? It's a really deep, beautiful topic.
It is. There's a lot of things that go into it. We were talking about risk and how you have to be willing to risk losing or looking bad or, all these different things that you actually cannot be a fighter if you're not willing to risk something.
Well, you can be. A lot of fighters avoid risk.
Yeah, but even getting in the ring is some small risk.
For
like whatever.
It's not. It's a huge. Anybody gets in the ring already is like got a star.
Yeah.
But then once you're in the ring, how you expose yourself to risk is a really interesting choice. You don't want to be blindly exposing yourself to risk.
Don't be stupid.
Holy fuck, I don't care what happens.
I'll see what happens when I cut my hands.
Yeah, but we were just seeing this Netflix Losers episode where some guy was like, fighters are the bravest people because every time you throw a strike, you risk getting a strike. And that there's like there's a risk, kind of like a willingness to suffer that's involved in the very act of fighting.
Yeah. But that's not only the physical thing of you might get hit.
Yes.
But when we're talking about perfume, or like even if you fought really great and you know you fought your best and you know that you dominated, but they gave you the loss, you feel shitty, even though you know it's complete crap, is that you risk questioning who you are, how good you are, the shame of other people, ridicule of other people, like there is absolute truth in that nobody fucking cares whether you win or lose a fight, but there's also total truth in that you have serious emotional risk in winning or losing a fight.
Yeah, you can unleash a chain of thoughts against which you have very little defense. Like, even people who seem like very accomplished and together people, there's always dark, especially driven people, have very dark sides to themselves.
Yeah.
And that lose 3 fights in a row, and those demons start riding.
Yeah.
Like, and that's part of the risk of fighting. It's like you're always on the edge of feeling those feelings again.
Yeah. There's a guy at the gym right now who, because he's teaching, he doesn't have time to train twice a day, because in the afternoons he has to be at the school.
Oh, Westerner.
Yeah, so he was asking me, he was like, do you think it's possible to train once a day and fight? And he actually was standing in front of another Western woman who he had been talking to about this, and I don't think she had the same opinion that I do. But I was weighing in my head how to answer that question, because my immediate one is, you could not train at all and fight. It just depends on what you want out of your fights, right? And so it's like, yeah, you could, but then when you show up, you have to really fucking show up for those sessions that you are here.
Yeah.
Or you have to be so strong in who you are that you can train once a day and know that you might lose all your fights and want to fight. What are you going to suffer for? Are you going to suffer your time, or are you going to suffer your body, or are you going to suffer your emotions?
Yeah.
Because if you want to like have it all and train once a day, then you're going to have to be fucking hardcore in how tough you are to not suffer all the things that make that hard.
Yeah. To me, you're on something really, really interesting and beautiful, because people are driven, they find the idea of fighting appealing for very different reasons.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they're really making the decision, the calculus, what am I willing to suffer for?
Yeah.
And maybe some of the reasons that people have are not worth suffering for that much. Do you know what I mean?
I want a photo for my wall.
Well, you kind of were driven by that in the last one. But that one meant a lot to you, actually.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, that's a very interesting calculus, not just for fighting, but really for the deepest things in our lives.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you willing, like, it might go sideways on. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next, I think it's the last segment. Okay. Maybe the final segment, we never really know. There might be a favorite joke section at the end. Spraying that topic on you. So we wanted to talk about, earlier in the podcast we were talking about frustration with belts and world titles and whatnot, but we want to talk a little bit about the state of Muay Thai, some interesting things that are happening, and
It's like news corner.
kind of. We're talking about one championship, right?
Yes. Specifically.
Okay, what are we specifically talking about?
Alma from Australia, who's a young, very aggressive fighter, very good for what Juan wants, has just signed, and she was very excited about it. It's a huge achievement for her. And Janet Todd from America, who fought against Stamp very recently, had another opportunity to come fight in Bangkok. And
okay, I feel like we're blowing through topic bullet points.
Okay, well, I've bullet pointed. Now you can break it down.
Okay. Let's enter it this way. Larger concept. One championship is providing huge opportunities for female, top-level female fighting, international opportunities that not only include exposure, but also financial gain, like career-type opportunities. And the first huge dimension of this was their adoption of Stamp Fairtex into the fold.
Yes.
Right? Just so to give our perspective on Stamp Fairtex and what this one championship opportunity for her was, she was a good, I would say a B to B plus level fighter. Like, she was not the best in Thailand at her weight. She lost to Petty Jaw in a way that people were like, she can't even fight her. I thought it was a good fight.
Yeah.
She beat you, but barely, with a couple of kilos on you, in a kind of performative way. Like, she was not, her career, which is typical of a girl her age, she'd spent much of her life fighting. Her career was going where so many Thai female fighters' career go. It was slowing down and about to end. Really.
Yeah, so she's been fighting since she was probably a little bit before 8. So she has tons of experience in fighting, and was probably going to not be fighting much anymore, going to school, college, all this stuff, but she got bought by Fairtex. They had never had a sponsored female fighter before.
Yeah.
And so they bought Stamp and turned her into what she is now. And she is a much better fighter than not only she was, but that she possibly could have been, given the trajectory that most women her age would have.
Very good female fighters, I think they peak around 16, because that's when they're fighting for the most money in side bets. That's when they're fighting the most frequently. Their career arc, once they hit 16, they start fighting infrequently, because their opponents only are other top side bet opponents, and there's a lot of dodging each other and negotiating what a side bet, where the fight's going to be, and a lot of times they just stop being able to fight.
Yep.
And by Stamp Fairtex being taken in by Fairtex, and then being given this one championship pathway, which is a promotion she could fight on for pretty significant fight pay.
And they promote her.
And promotion.
Yeah.
Promotional, like, into a person with highlights and storytelling about herself. This is something that no Thai female fighter would have had.
Yeah.
This is a huge difference,
and
even though it's one person.
She's going into MMA a little bit. She has 2 belts through one. One is kickboxing, one's Muay Thai, right?
I think so.
But she is going into MMA. Contrast that with Loma, who's going into MMA, but she has none of this promotional behind her.
Well, not none. She has some.
But not like this.
Not like this. But Loma, another fighter who had peaked and would run out of opponents in Thailand, was a higher level talent than Stamp, I would say, when she was a fighter. She is arguably the best, or one of the best female fighters in the world when she was fighting in Thailand as a Muay Thai fighter. She transitioned to MMA. Invicta, I guess she's pursuing this kind of MMA career, which also is an interesting, viable career extension for top female fighters.
Yeah.
But we're talking about Muay Thai extension of a career. And if you compare the promotional pictures building around the careers of both of them, you can see that Stamp, at least from our corner of the world, what one is doing is kind of amazing.
Yeah. What's
happening with Stamp. And not to even denigrate what's happening with Loma, that's its own path as well. It's more, let's talk about what's going on with one championship. So, an additional story. So that's one great story, right? I don't know how many Thai female fighters are going to be pulled over to one. I know that Cherry Sityodong, who was not an elite fighter, except when she was maybe 14, she was pretty good. She was training over there. She was going to be part of the promotion, but not a lot has come of it. Mm-hmm. But maybe other Thai females will be pulled into the money and into the process. But Janet Todd of the United States was flown in to fight Stamp and had a great fight against Stamp. Stamp won. Stamp, if she's going to be a like signature fighter, she needs great opponents.
Yep.
And Janet Todd went over there and fought and gave her all she could handle. Stamp pulled out the fight in a really, to me, in a way that impressed me about Stamp's skill and let me know how much she's progressed as a fighter since we knew her as a Thai fighter. Like the whole Fairtex thing has really elevated her on many levels, not just technically, but also confidence-wise and her aggression in space. But this is a really interesting thing. Janet Todd, we were like, she had just turned pro, I don't know, a year ago or something like that. She had a long time amateur fighter with lots of success. And when she turned pro, we were like, what is going to happen?
Because we've seen this story before, because the scene in America is so
what's the story?
Inconsistent. Amy Davis.
No, but what is the story? The story being good female fighters who are amateur turn pro and have no opponents. Like turning pro as a woman in the West kills your career.
It can be crazy because you have no other pros. You're going into a tiny pool.
Which is why they get squeezed into MMA eventually. So
for Janet to have one, the opportunity to come fight Stamp on one, but then to have done so well that one was like, again, and take her and bring her for this most recent one.
Speeding into the point. Go ahead. Describe it in slower motion.
This is an amazing opportunity for an American. We're talking about for a Thai person, for a Thai woman, this was a great opportunity because of where her trajectory would have gone. For an American woman, your trajectory is not so great either. At that size, you have nobody to fight.
Well, the big question is, what is she going to do? She gets an opportunity all the way. Where does they fight? In Singapore?
Yes.
Okay. They have this kind of like coming out pro party against Stamp, who was kind of the promotions girl.
Yep.
And Janet does so well, like her style was really kind of like beautiful, aggressive, that she finds herself then being flown by one out to a show in a kickboxing match, not Muay Thai, in Bangkok. So, okay, not Muay Thai, but kickboxing. It's kind of crazy to me to fly all the way to Thailand for not a Muay Thai fight. But
it's the promotion.
This is the promotion. One does MMA, kickboxing, and Muay Thai. Like they really want to create a mixed martial art, like a true mixed martial art brand impression, platform. So I don't know. We don't know enough about the Janet Todd story in terms of what really happened, but it is so cool that she got the opportunity to fight this big fight in Singapore, but then they liked her enough that they're like, now come fight on our next card in Bangkok.
And she did great.
And she leg kicked this girl to death. Apparently only saw a highlight, but she looked like she totally owned that fight. I guess the thing that excites me and that's important is this is creating an avenue of female fighting that just did not exist in any way, shape, or form before. And I'm not sure how many fighters it will affect. Hopefully a lot. But Thai female fighter, 19 years old, been fighting since she was 8. Her career is about to die.
Yeah.
Right? She has a lifetime of experience at 19 already. What's going to come of it? Nothing. Like a few belt fights, maybe, if she has the connections. Instead, ascending.
I think she's like 21 now.
Yeah, I'm saying that she was when you're 19. When you're 19, it's kind of ending.
Yeah.
Like there's no opportunities for these wonderful fighters, and then devoted amateur, successful United States fighter turning pro. Who is she going to fight? The same problem.
Yeah.
Right? And then they get to fight each other.
Yeah.
And then not only do they get to fight each other, but then that leads to another opportunity for Janet to fight. She fought a Chinese opponent who don't know. And there's something really cool going on here that's honestly probably being fueled by one's success in MMA, the way they're like pulling on the UFC audiences.
But they're building something.
Yeah, you
by
can
them
feel
now
it.
signing Alma, they're
that's another
building
thing.
something.
That Alma, I would say, is one of the most exciting young Western female Muay Thai fighters on the planet. Who did she beat? I forgot who she beat. She beat somebody unexpectedly, like
Farrell. I don't know what her first name is.
No. She beat a Thai.
Oh, Wonder Girl.
Did she?
Yeah. No?
No, I don't think Wonder Girl would fight her.
No.
She would be pieced up by her.
She fought somebody out of Sanctia Noy's gym. She was at Sanctia Noy's gym and fought somebody. And she did a really good job.
She's an explosive, dynamic fighter who throws with combinations, but not like a memorized fighter. And now she's going over, again, one is grabbing a young talent that they can maybe build a promotional thing. This is something that you wanted to talk about, which is not just that they're giving her the fight, but they're actually, they invest in the storytelling around a female, that this is our fighter.
Yeah.
Well, can you talk about that a little bit? What it feels like to you, because you've been in the fight game for a little bit now.
I think that people failed to recognize on a large scale because they just don't pay that close of attention. But when the UFC created a female division, they had a star and then whoever they're feeding to her. You can't care that much about an entire division when you have a star and then whoever's fighting her. You have to build everybody. Like, you have to have all the stories, and so you're like, oh my god, she's fighting her. Like, if one had not cared about Janet anymore because even though she fought great, she lost.
Yes,
they're like, bye. And now you're like, well, now who's Stamp fighting? I don't know, whoever the next name is that I'm not going to remember or whatever. Now you're like, I remember Janet. She did great against Stamp. Now she's done this really great thing.
Very interesting how off of a loss, opportunity
because she fought fucking well.
Yes, but also one has the brains to like recognize the value.
Yeah.
And to be like, and again.
Yes.
Like, that is unusual in female promotions.
And we were contrasting this with Yokao's approach.
Yeah.
Which was when I fought Lomani, which is quite a well-known fight to even people who don't know me because it's the one where she cut me so much. This was like my first major cuts in fights.
Over 100 fights ago.
Because she won that fight, Yokao signed her. But then they didn't promote her other than saying that no one would fight her. And so nobody actually fought her. And
I don't know, did she even fight one time after that?
I don't know. I think she may have gone and done a seminar or something.
No, like Sylvie Lenote.
She fought Lenote before me.
I thought they fought again.
No, Sylvie Lenote didn't want to fight her again because of the elbows. But
basically her career died.
Which is crazy, because if you look at that fight, I didn't win that fight. My career has been pretty good. Her career has gone way down.
Totally. And
because of how they don't promote her, because of the way that they just...
Not only do they not promote her, but they don't promote anybody around her.
Yeah.
Like, there's no... And the same thing happened with Amy
Like, who's going to watch a fight if you're like, our amazing fighter, she's going to walk through this opponent? You're not going to watch that. You're like, our amazing fighter is going to fight this amazing fighter.
Totally.
Like,
and
awesome.
the same thing kind of happened with Amy Pierney. Amy Pierney fought for Yokao, and they just fed her European fighter, I think. But nothing really came of that.
Yeah, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you didn't even know she was a Yokao fighter. I believe she was a Yokao fighter.
It was in England, I think, that happened.
Yeah, exactly. But there was no embrace of female fighting in the concept, like how one is displaying it, right?
Yeah.
Where the loser gains opportunity.
Yeah. And
maybe there are financial constraints on what they can do, but it also seems like a different mindset. Amy Pierney finally goes and fought in Lion Fight and got a big title in America, but that wasn't under that promotion, under the Yokao promotion. And it's interesting to see the difference. The Yokao approach is maybe more of a traditional kind of promotional approach. The One Championship approach is this holistic embrace of female fighting, and I can't imagine like what they're gonna do, because they can't sign enough fighters to fight stamp.
No.
And also to build them into great storylines.
Right.
Like, where are they going to find 4 or 5 51 kilo? We know all the 51 kilo wonderful fighters.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure that the whole thing can develop. Who is Alma going to fight? There needs to be 3 more like badass 54 kilo girls. I don't know. Maybe they have a deeper plan. But man, what they're doing already is totally on the right path.
Yeah, they're hitting good notes over and over and over and over again.
Right? It's not like one good note. It's like, yeah, and that's a good idea, and that's a good idea.
And now we're going to start our own network. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, totally. So, as a side note, one championship, people are like tagging one on Sylvie's fights now, and blah, 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 blah.
By saying one championship people, he means people who watch one championship, not people who work for one championship.
Yeah, people are tagging one they're going at one championship in comments, and people privately message you should do one championship. This is the thing to say. We are huge fans and supporters of one championship, but our total philosophy, which has been from the very beginning, is avoid all big promotional platforms. One is because, just speaking from my perspective, one is a promotion basically has its interest in heart. So its driving decisions are about itself. And when promotions are powerful, you get pulled into their gravitational pull, which are those interests. What we generally do, and we've been doing it from the beginning, is we're like, no belts, although you fought for one. It was like, Sylvie, you want to fight? And we're like, yeah, why not? No big promotions. Everything is Tyson and the Catskills. You can see it in our last Muay Thai Bones podcast.
If you want to know what that means, we talked about that in the last podcast.
Which is basically lots and lots of fights, moving towards a really, really high level of feeling and fluency that only comes from lots and lots of fights. Avoiding the traps of defining rest stops.
Yeah, or external interests and organizations making that definition for you.
Yeah, totally. So we're like, wow, that one is pretty awesome. But we have always had this recipe, which is really, I'm going to speak for Sylvie in this. It's aiming to be a certain kind of fighter that cannot be defined or captured by belts or promotional, like a promotional material. Like the competence you are pursuing in clinch fighting is, to me, off the charts. Like, it's never been done, never been attempted by a female fighter, maybe not even a male fighter, because of the kinds of influences you can have from all the legends that you are training with, and not even also unknown gem crews of the library. And I'm like, there's something so satisfying on the ultra that you're running. And people are like, why don't you run in this 100-yard dash? And I'm like, and we're like,
I'm like doing Badwater on my own with no real start finish line organization.
Totally.
And they're like, go do the Boston Marathon.
And no, it's a 100-yard dash. And you're like, okay, if you can organize the 100-yard dash so it's in the Badlands Ultra, like this 100 yards, then yes, I will run that.
I'll do that one.
I'll run that 100-yard dash.
Give me a bib.
But I'm gonna keep running after the 100th yard, right? Is it not like that? I remember that. It was like you fought some Western fighter, and it was just like, yeah, we'll throw that in on 2 days notice or 5 days notice or whatever. And then all I want is to not get cut so I can fight 3 days later. And it was like, people are just are not used to the concept of thinking of fights in 3s and 5s and like this kind of throwing yourself forward. Like, people are like, well, Sylvie, when are you going to retire and teach people? And you're like, I'm thinking of 10 more years. I'm not even halfway in my fight total. Like, these are perspectives that just people don't have.
If you want to check my inbox and see how many people write to me telling me what they've learned, I am teaching people currently. I don't gotta stop to teach anybody.
That is true. That is so true.
I'm gonna keep running.
That is so true. So, I don't know. I have to say I'm impressed by the Alma signing. It means that they're just really reaching out. I don't think Alma can get down to
she's a different division.
They created a division?
Well, she's a different weight.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe Stamp will fight up. And Alma will fight down. I don't know how far down Alma can go.
I don't know.
Is she 54?
I think 53 something. That's what she
I don't think that far. I mean, if Stamp's 51, I don't know. Either that's another family of opponents they have to grow, or they're trying to bridge together. But they have three with Janet. There's 3 exciting fighters, female fighters that are kind of like active, aggressive combination fighters, which will sell to a mixed martial art audience.
Yeah, and it moves. Like, they have different locations.
Yeah, totally.
It's cool.
Okay, so what else we're gonna wrap this up. What we were going to a favorite joke section? Is that what we were doing? Do you have one, honey? What is your favorite?
I don't think...
From your brothers?
Yeah, I don't have many clean jokes.
Oh, we can just beep it out at the end.
One joke that I really like...
I can't believe you're going down this road.
Because my brother really likes it. There are 2 muffins in an oven, and one turns to the other and says, "Man, it's getting really hot in here." And the other one goes, "Holy shit, a talking muffin."
You really like that one?
I like it because Shane likes it.
Oh, because Shane's your favorite brother. We won't say anything. I don't really have a favorite joke. I think my favorite jokes are all the jokes you tell.
Like, yes, honey, I'll do that right now.
Maybe.
That's my favorite joke. Yeah, I'll do that right away.
That is one of my best jokes. Oh my God. It's too funny.
I told a joke that isn't a joke to Emma last night in text as I was closing the salt container that is now completely crystallized and gross because you left the cap off. I said there's a profound irony in the world that men are known for being able to open things, but you guys can't close shit, man.
Why isn't that a joke?
Cupboards, doors, jars, nothing.
That's right.
You don't close anything.
I don't close the closet door at all there.
No.
You're like kicking that thing closed.
No.
I like things to be kind of open. It's about it being very focused towards openness.
Yeah, like if you didn't
open the jar.
If you didn't leave the empty cheese wrapper on the table, how would I know that you
exactly
cheese to go buy more?
Just sharing with you. Wordless communication.
I just don't want to be alone.
Totally.
Experiences.
Totally. All right, so that Muay Thai Bones wasn't bad.
No.
Another one in the books. Okay, I'm gonna let you do the patron thing. I put it on you. Go for it, baby.
No, baby, you do it.
No, go for
baby,
it.
Please,
no,
I'm
go.
sorry.
Go for it.
If you guys like this, we produce tons of content for free, which we're able to do because of the generosity and support provided by my patrons. For my patrons, we provide special content that's on Patreon for my patrons as a thank you for the support that they give to produce everything that we do. So if you guys have enjoyed this and you'd like to help support other content like this and see what's on Patreon, because there's so much there. There's all kinds of amazing content that there is nothing like it anywhere else in the world on the internet. Check out the link in the description for Patreon, and go check it out.
I would also add, there's all kinds of content reasons to become a patron supporter. There's nothing like what we produce has ever been produced. One piece of a documentary or a Legends thing, there's nothing ever been done like it, and we do hundreds of hours, really. It's kind of insane. But this is the thing, that's not even the most exciting thing that is produced with Patron, because Patron is what makes Sylvie able to fight. And I'm telling you, you're looking at a change in female, and maybe in Muay Thai in general, in what Sylvie's doing. Her goals are so large that it's about changing the sport for women, but also for everyone. Like that's why we pull up honoring the history of the great legends of Muay Thai too, is like sewing that sail together. Like the arc of this fighting path is just mind-bogglingly big, and as a patron you support that, and even $1 a month is an awesome wind in the sail.
600 meters. Keep right at the fort.
Oh, okay, well, I guess we should go, but thank you for those who are already patrons already, and we're just going to keep going with this podcast because it's fun to do, and everybody seems to like it.
Thank you, guys.
And the cue music.